Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Now in today's video, we are going to build a complete medical website from scratch using just HTML, CSS and JavaScript. Now I assure you by the end of this course, you'll be able to comfortably build any website from scratch using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. Because in this course, we're not just going to be writing code, we're going to explain everything step by step without skipping any step. Which means if you're a beginner in HTML and CSS, you don't have to get overwhelmed. Everything is going to be explained step by step. Now in this course, we're going to build this navigation bar right here with this hover effect. We're going to build the heroes section. After that, we're going to build a about us section of this website. And we're also going to build the services section. We'll build this contact us section, the team section. And also, we're also going to build the testimonial section, this subscribe box right here. And also, we're going to build the footer. And you'll be able to navigate this web page using the links. In my heroes section, and if I click on about, it's going to take me to the about us section. When I click on medical team, it's going to take me to the team section. Also, when I click on testimonials, it's going to bring me to the testimonials section. You're going to learn how to do all this in this video. And we're not going to stop there. We're going to ensure this website is fully responsive in all screen devices. And when I go to my developer tools, I'm going to notice that any screen I view this web page on is going to be fully responsive. Right now, I'm viewing this on iPhone 12 Pro. I can view this on iPad Mini. It's still going to be fully responsive. I can view it on a larger screen device next door, which is a larger tablet. It's still going to look responsive. And you also learn how to check your website in different simulator devices to check if you are responsive on those devices. We can also check on iPhone 14 Pro Max. I'll zoom that out. And you can see that this website looks extremely good for iPhone 14 Pro Max. And you can click on this hamburger menu icon to actually open up the menu. Click on it again to close up the menu. If you'd like to follow along with this project step by step and use the exact same images I'm using, I'm going to leave a link to this startup file on GitHub. You can just clone that repo and be able to follow along with this course. And also, if you want to view this project live, I'm going to leave a link to the live demo in the description below, along with the link for the GitHub repo with the startup files. Now, if you are excited about this project, smash on the like button and leave a comment of what project you'd like to see next on this channel. And lastly, if you've not subscribed, ensure you do that and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out on the next project we're going to build together on this channel. Let's dive into it. I already have my index.html file set up, and inside this index.html file, I have this link right here that's basically just importing photons. So I'm using this CDN link right here. And I also have this link right here that's linking this index.html file to this style.css file right here. And inside this style.css file, first of all, up here, I'm actually importing Google font from Google. And down here, I'm applying that as a font family for my web page, Poppins. And you'll see the fallback value right here, sans serif. I also have a root variable that contains all the color we are going to use for this project. And lastly, I have an images folder right here that contains all the images we are going to use for this project. If you'd like to use the exact images I'm using for this project, these images are going to be available in the startup file repo. If for some reason you cannot clone the startup repo, you can basically create a style.css file, an index.html file, and copy those startup code inside your own project. And also, if you need the images, you can download the images from the GitHub repo. GitHub allows you to download images from their website. Okay, so I'm going to close up this folder and close up this sidebar. So let's start working on our project. So first of all, I'm going to create a main, and this main is going to wrap around everything in the web page. After that, I'm going to create a section. This section is going to have a class of hero section. Okay. Now, when you are building a website, you have to break everything into sections. Now, the hero is going to have its own section. The about is going to have its own section. The services and the footer, they are all going to have their own sections. And this hero section is going to contain the navigation bar and also the home page of the web page, like the first thing the user is going to see when the user visits the website. Okay. So inside this section, I want to create a nav tag. Now, this nav tag I just added is what's going to represent everything on our navigation bar. This medcare right here, these links right here, and also this appointment. Okay, so that's going to be our navigation. After that, I want to create a p tag. I'll give this p tag a class of logo. And this p tag is simply going to be acting as our logo since we don't have a logo to work with. So inside this logo, I'm going to say medcare. Then I'm going to wrap this med inside its own span because I want to give it its own unique size. So I add the span and I'm passing that med right here. You can see in the final project, this med has its own unique style, while this care has its own style. Okay, that's why I'm wrapping this med inside a span so I can actually style it separately from the entire pic tag. Okay, now after this pic tag, I'm going to create an another list. And this another list is going to have a class of nav links. And it's going to contain an li tag. Each of these li tags is going to have an anchor tag in them. Okay, for now, this anchor tag is not going to lead anywhere. And this particular one is simply going to say home. So I'm going to drag down multiple times. 1, 2, 3, 4. The next one is going to say about. The next one is going to say services. The fourth one is going to say medical team. And the last one is simply going to say testimonials. Now after this another list, I'm going to have a div that's going to represent the item that's going to be on the right hand side of the navbar, which is going to be that anchor tag that is simply going to say appointment. And this link is not going to lead anywhere, so I'll put a hash there. Now to actually run this project, I'm going to click on Go Live because I have Visual Studio Code Live Server extension installed in my Visual Studio Code. Okay, so I just click on Go Live. And that's going to open up this project in my browser. You can see those items we just added, Medcare, and the other links we just added right here. So next we have to start actually adding styles to this item. Okay, so let's actually start doing that. Now I'm going to head to my style.css file and start applying styles to those elements. So down here I'm going to see nav. Right now we are targeting this nav right here, this nav that wraps around everything, like this nav tag right here. That's the tag we are targeting. So I'm going to give this nav a display of flex, and that's going to ensure that the items of that navigation are going to be arranged side by side horizontally. Okay, I'll save that. Now when I return back to the web page, I'm going to notice that these items, the logo, the nav links, and this appointment link are now arranged side by side. And that's what the display flex does. It's going to arrange the items side by side. Now what I want to do next is that I want this Medcare logo at the left hand side. I want these links right here at the middle, and I want this appointment link at the end right here. Okay, so let's do that. To do that, I'm going to add a justify content. I'm going to use space between. That's going to add space between each of the items. As you can see right now, this Medcare logo is at the left hand side, these links are at the middle, and this one is at the right hand side. And that's what the justify content space between is going to do. It's going to add space between each of the elements. Next, I'm going to add a background color to this nav so that we can actually see background color. I want to give it a background color of light blue. That's these variable colors up here. I'm using this light blue right here. Okay. And then I want to add a padding to it. Top and bottom, I want a padding of 0. Left and right, I want a padding of 5%. Now I'm going to save that. Now when I return back to the web, you're going to notice that there's now a padding at the left hand side and at the right hand side of this navigation bar. Okay. So next, I want this Medcare logo and this appointment logo to be at the center. Okay. So to do that, I'm going to give these nav align items. I'll say center. Now this is going to ensure that the items are centered vertically. And then I'm going to give this nav a height of 60 pixels. I'll save that. Now when I return back to the web, you're going to notice that this navigation bar now has a height of 60 pixels and these items are now vertically centered. So I want to start styling the items of the navigation bar. So first of all, I want to start with this logo. So I'm going to go back to my style.css file. So down here, I'm going to say .logo. I want to give this logo a font size of 1.5 rem, a font weight of 600, and lastly, color of dark gray. I'll save that. Now when I return back to the web page, you're going to start this logo is now a little bit styled. So next, I want to add styles to the span tag. Remember that when we created this logo in our index.html file, we wrap this bed inside a span. So I want to target that span with CSS. So down here, I'm going to say .logo. Then I want to target the span inside this logo. The span. I want to target the span inside this logo container. I want to give it a background color of this blue right here. A color of white. Now I want to add a margin between this span and this care right here. Okay, so I'm going to give this span a margin right. I'll just use 5 pixels. I'll save that. Now when I return back to the web, you're going to notice that those styles have been applied and this spanner has a background of blue and a color of white. But we can actually make this better by adding a padding to it and also a little bit of border radius. So let's do that. So I'm going to add a padding to this. Top and bottom, I'm going to give it a padding of 3 pixels. Left and right, a padding of 5 pixels. Then I'm going to give it a border radius of 5 pixels, 10 pixels. I'll save that. And when I return back to the web, you can see this logo is looking really, really good. But I feel they are too far apart. Let me reduce that margin to about 2 pixels. I'll just reduce that to 2 pixels. Yeah, it's better this way. Now that we are done styling the logo, let's start styling these nav links. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my style.css file. Down here, I'm going to say nav. Remember, we gave this another list a class of nav links. Okay, so we're going to target this class. So I'll copy this. I'll go to my style.css, so I'll paste that class right here. And first of all, I want these links to be arranged side by side. I don't want them to be arranged vertically. Okay, I want them to be arranged horizontally, side by side. So first of all, I'll just give them a display of flex, and that's going to ensure that these elements are going to be arranged side by side. Then I'm going to give it a list style of none. That's going to get rid of that annoying bullet points at the edges of this link right there. So next, let's start actually styling the individual links. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my style.css. So I just copy this, I'll paste that down here, and I'll target the anchor tag. I'm going to give this a text decoration of none, and that text decoration of none is going to ensure that these anchor tags don't have any underline on them. Okay, it's going to get rid of that line underneath these anchor tags. Okay, then I want to give this a color of dark gray. Then next, I want to add a margin to them. Top and bottom, I want a margin of 0. Left and right, I want a margin of 20 pixels. Then a font weight of 500. I'll save that. And now return back to the web page. You can see the links are actually looking really, really good. So the next thing I'm going to do is that when someone hovers on this link, I want to give it something like a hover property. Okay, I want the color of the links to be blue. So I'll just head back to my style.css file. I'm going to copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. Now when you say on hover, I'm going to give this a color of blue. And to actually make the hover effect smooth, I'm going to add a transition to it. Transition is going to be a transition for the color property. 0.5 seconds is in, out. I'll save that. And when I return back to the web page, you can see that when I hover on this link, you can see that nice blue color of the links. Okay, so next, let's style up this appointment link right here. First of all, I have to give the div that wraps around the anchor tag a class name. Okay, so I'll just go back to my index.html file. Down here, I'm going to add a class. I'll call this nav right. I'm just going to copy this nav right class. Then I'll head to my style.css file. Down here, I'm going to say nav. Then I'll target the nav right container. Then I want to target the anchor tag in there. Okay, first of all, I'll give this a background color of dark blue. Then I'll give it a text color. I want the color of the text to be white. Text color of white. I'll save that. And now you return back to the web page. You can see that link right here, and you can see that ugly underline on that link. Okay, now I can add text decoration to this link right here. I can just copy this style and add it to this link, but we are going to be repeating that for every anchor tag we create. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a general style. So I'll just cut this off from this place. I'll head up. Now up here, just before this nav, I want to create an anchor tag style. I'll paste that in here. And this way, every anchor tag we create in this web page is going to have a text decoration of none. I can see right now that this appointment link right here doesn't have that line underneath it. Okay, so next we're going to apply a padding to this link right here to make it look better. So I just go to my style.css file, scroll down, add a padding. Top and bottom, I want it to have a padding of 8 pixels. Sorry, 8 pixels. Left and right, 10 pixels. Then I'm going to add a border radius of 5 pixels to make the edges smoother. Then when I return back to the web page, you can see that link right here is completely styled. So what we are going to work on next is that when we hover on this link, we want to actually signify to the user that you are hovering over this link. Okay, so to do that, I'm going to say on hover. Down here, I'll just copy this. I'll paste that right here. Then I'm going to say on hover of this link, I want to add a background color of blue. I'll save that. When I return back to the web, when I hover on this, see it's going to change to blue. I think I want this light blue as the color. Then when I hover on it, I want it to have this background of dark blue. That's going to be better. Let me just cut this. And I head to I'll just remove this, paste that right here. Then background color, when you hover on it, I want it to have dark blue instead. Save that. Yeah, this is better. This is better. When you hover on it, it's going to be dark blue. And for the hover effect to be actually smooth, we have to add a transition to it. So I go back to my CSS. Inside this anchor tag, I add a transition. And this time it's going to be background. 0.5 seconds is in out. I'll save that. Now when I return back to the web, you're going to notice that when I hover on this, it's going to be very, very smooth. And with that, you are basically done with the navbar. So let's start working on the hero content. Okay. So I'm going to go back to my index.html file. I'll wrap up this nav right here. I'll just wrap it up. Now underneath this, I'm going to create a div. And this div is going to have a class of hero content. And inside this div, we're going to have two containers. We're going to have a first container. It's going to have a class of hero left. Then we're going to have another one that's going to be hero right. And the hero left is what's going to contain these texts right here. This text in the hero section, this text and this button. While the hero right is going to contain this image. Okay. Now inside this hero left, I'm going to have a h2 tag. And this h2 tag is going to have this sentence in it: reliable medical care delivered with heart and precision. Okay. And you notice that these heart and precision are wrapped inside a span tag. That's because we're going to add unique styles to them. And after this h2 tag, I'm going to have a p tag. Now this p tag is going to have this long text in it. And lastly, we're going to have an anchor tag that's not going to go anywhere. And inside this anchor tag, first of all, we're going to have an icon in there. And the icon is going to have a class of var check cycle. These icons I'm adding right now, I'm getting from this CDN link right here, this font awesome CDN link up here. Okay, that's where I'm getting these icons from. Then this anchor tag is also going to have a span. I'm simply going to say book appointment. Then inside the hero right, we're going to have an image. And this is going to go into the images folder. Then it's going to access this hero image.png. I'll save that. Now when I return back to the web page, I'm going to notice that we have this humongous image right here. Very, very, very large image. Okay. So let's start actually applying styles to the image and the hero content. But first off, I'm going to add a background to this hero. Remember that in our finished project, we're going to have a background right here. This background is going to contain this little blue at the back of this image. Okay, so let's actually add that background. So I'm going to head to my style of CSS right now. I'm going to copy this hero section because I want to apply the background image to this hero section. Okay, I'll go to my style of CSS file. I'll just paste that down here. Now first off, I want to add a background image to this hero section. Okay, and to add a background image in CSS, first of all, I'm going to say background. Then I'm going to use URL. Now inside this URL, I'm going to add a path to that image. Okay, now where is this image? This image is inside our images folder. Then I want to access this hero background.png. I'll click on that. I'm going to give it a background position of center, a background size. I'm going to use cover. Then background repeats. I don't want any repeats. So I'm going to say no repeat. I'll save that. And when I return back to the web page, I'm going to notice that the background is actually here, but we cannot actually see it. Now, the reason for that is because the image is so large, it's actually stretching out this hero container. It's actually stretching out the hero container. So let's actually apply styles to the image. And to apply styles to the image, down here I'm going to say dots hero section. Now remember that this image is inside a hero right container, and this hero right container is inside a hero context container. Okay, so I want to copy this hero context container. Go to my style of CSS, so I'll paste that right here. Then after that, I'm going to say hero right, which is going to target the content that actually houses the image. And inside that container, I want to target the image in there. Okay, I'll give the image a width of 100%. I'll give the image a height of 100 VH. Then object fit, I'm going to use cover. And also I want to apply some styles to the hero content. So I just copy this. Now I want to give this a display of flex, and that's going to ensure that the contents of the hero, the left hand and the right hand contents, are arranged side by side, okay, not vertically. They are going to be arranged horizontally. I'll give it a height of 100 VH, and also I'm going to align the items. I'm going to use flex start. Now save that. Now when I return back to the web page, I'm going to see that the image is now in the viewport. You can actually see the image better like this. And now the items are now arranged side by side because we give them a display of flex. The image is at the right hand side, while these contents are at the left. So next, I want to add a padding to this hero content. You can notice right now that this info text are too close to the edges at the left hand side. Okay, so I'm going to add a padding, but I don't want to add a padding at the right hand side of this, because if I add a padding at the right hand side, it's going to affect and compress the image a bit. And also I don't want to add a padding at the top and at the bottom. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to say I want to add a padding top of 0, right of 0, bottom of 0, and left of 4%. I'll save that. Now when I return back to the web page, I'm going to notice that no padding was added to the top, the bottom, and even at the right hand side. The padding was only applied at the left hand side. So next, I want to style up the left hand side of the hero. That's this H2 text, this p tag, and this link right here, and the entire hero left. Let's do that. So I'll go to my style of CSS file. Just scroll down now. Just copy this. I'll paste that up here. Then I want to target the hero left. That's this hero left container right here. This container is hero left class right here. First of all, I want to give it a flex of 1. And this flex of 1 is going to ensure that this hero left occupies as much width as it can get. Okay, so I just give it a background color of red so you can actually see it. Now I'll save that and return back to the web page. I'm going to notice that this hero left right here is occupying up to this point right here. Okay, now the reason why this left hand side is actually this kind of squish is because remember we gave this image a height of 100 VH and a width of 100%. Now to ensure this image actually occupies the space it requires, it's going to actually compress parts of this left hand side. Okay, and we don't want that. Okay, so what we are going to do, we're going to ensure that this image, the content that wraps around this image, also has a flex of 1. So I just go back to my CSS. I'll just copy this right here. I want to give the hero right a flex of 1 too. So I'll paste that right here. Now I'm going to give this a flex of 1. Then I'll give it a background color of blue so you can actually see where it's occupying. I'll save that. And when I return back to the web page, I'm going to notice that this image now occupies around here 50%, while this content now expands and occupy 50%. Now this is how we want it. We want this content to always occupy 50%, and we want this image, the container that wraps around the image, to occupy 50%. All right, so I'm going to get rid of those background color. I'll get rid of this. I'll get rid of this. I'll save that. Now for the hero left, that's these items right here. I want to give them a margin top of 80 pixels to actually add space between the items and this navbar. So I just give them a margin top of 80 pixels. Now when I return back to the web page, I'm going to notice that there's now a margin between these items right here and this navigation bar. So next I'll quickly style up this H2 tag right here. So I'll just copy my hero left. I'll copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. Now just target the H2 tag inside this container. I'll give this a font size of 3.3 rem, a color of dark gray. I'll save that. Now when I return back to the web page, I'm going to notice that this H2 tag is actually bigger and the color is now actually dark gray. Now remember that in the final project that this precision and this hat has a color of blue. Okay, so that's what we are going to do. We're going to give this a color of blue. I'm going to give this one a color of blue. That's why we added them in the span tag. So all we have to do now is just go to our style of CSS. So I'll just copy this right here. Then I'll paste that underneath here. Then I'll just target the span tag. I'll give this span tag a color of blue. I'll save that. Now when I return back to the web page, I'm going to notice that the hat and the precision now has a color of blue. Next, let's style up this paragraph tag. Okay, and also let's quickly add a margin between this H2 tag and this paragraph tag. To do that, I'll just give this H2 tag a margin bottom. I'll use 20 pixels, and that's going to add a margin between this H2 tag and this p tag right here. I think this image is actually going to look better if we actually increase the flex. Let me just quickly increase the flex. Instead of flex of 1, I'm going to use a flex of 1.3 for the hero right. I'll save that. And that's actually better. It actually adds a space at the right hand side right here. Doesn't compress the image too much to the right hand side. Next, let's style up this p tag. Okay, so I just copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. And I'll just target the p tag in there. I'll give the p tag a font size of 1.2 rem and a color of dark gray. I'll save that. Yeah, that looks really good. Next, let's quickly style up this link right here. So same thing I did, I just paste that right here. Then I'm going to target the anchor tag in there. For the anchor tag, it's going to have a background color of blue, dark blue. Then it's going to have a color of white. And when I return back to the web, I'm going to notice that this anchor tag now has a background color of blue and a color of white. But it's too close to this p tag, so I'm going to add a margin between them. So I just add a margin to this p tag, add a margin bottom. I use 40 pixels. And that's going to ensure we have a margin between this paragraph tag and this link right here. Next, I'm going to add a padding of 15 pixels to the link and a border radius of 3 pixels. I'll save that. Now, when I return back to the web page, I'm going to notice that this anchor tag is actually looking way better. But I don't want this icon inside this button to have a color of white. I want it to have a color of this light blue we use for this button right here. Okay, so I'm going to target that icon inside the anchor tag. To do that, I'll just copy this right here. I'll paste that underneath here. Now just target the icon in there. I'm going to give this icon a color of blue, this light blue right here. I'll save that. And that looks way better. And with that, I'm basically done styling the hero section. Now we have to ensure it's actually responsive. So next we have to make sure that the navbar is responsive and the content of this hero, the hero content, is actually responsive too. Now to actually do that, I'm going to inspect my web page. I click on my web page and I head to inspect, and that's going to bring me right here. Okay, you can see right now that I can actually increase and reduce the size of this screen. Right here, I can see that this number up here is actually reduced. When I reduce the screen size, that's actually reducing. That represents the actual size of the screen. Okay, and also you can actually choose the device you want to simulate this web page on. You can use iPhone 12. You can see how it's going to look on iPhone 12, and it looks, and you can see that it's highly unresponsive. It's not responsive at all. You can use iPad mini, and this is how the web page is going to look on iPad mini. Now let's just get back to responsive, because with this response, you can actually increase and decrease the size of the device. Because when we're using simulator devices, they actually have a fixed width. When I take it back to iPhone 12, I'm going to note that it has a fixed width of 390. Okay, but we want to be able to increase and decrease the size. We can measure out the breakpoints. Okay, so I'm going to head to my Visual Studio Code. I want to create a new file. I'll call this file responsive.css. responsive.css. Now I'm going to link this to my index.html file. So I'll go back to my index.html file. I'll just drag this down. Then instead of style.css, I'm going to say responsive.css. Now inside my responsive, I'm going to have 4 breakpoints. First of all, I'm going to have breakpoints for desktops, and laptops. And this is going to be our screen size of 1280 pixels. I'll comment that off. I'm going to have another breakpoint down here, and this breakpoint is going to be for small laptops, and it's going to be at 1024 pixels. I'll comment that off. Then next, I'm going to have another breakpoint, and this breakpoint is going to be for tablets, and it's going to be 768 pixels. I'll comment that off. And last, we're going to have the last breakpoint, which is going to be for mobile devices, very simply mobile phones. And it's going to be 600 pixels. I'll comment that off. Now just close up this sidebar right here. Now I'm going to head back to the web page, actually measure where I want to start adding breakpoint. First of all, I'm going to work on making the navbar responsive. So I want to comment out this hero section right here so it doesn't interrupt what we are doing. So I head to my index.html file. I'll just wrap up this hero content. Then for now, just comment it off. I'll return back to the web page. That Eagle content is not there, so we can actually focus on making the navbar responsive. Now, when I start reducing the screen size, you're going to notice that these numbers they start to reduce. When I start reducing the screen size, you're going to notice that the navbar start to actually compress. So what I want to do is that as this 1024 pixels, at 1024 pixels, I want to get rid of this button right here. Okay, so I'm going to go to my responsive.css file. Inside my 1024 breakpoints, it says for small laptops, I want to add a media query. I'll say add media. Media. Max width of 1024 pixels. Now, what do I want to do at 1024 pixels? Now, when the screen size goes less than 1024 pixels, I want to actually get rid of this appointment button. Okay, so I'm going to simply give it a display of none. So I'll go to my CSS and actually look for that class. I head up, and right here you can see it right here, navbar, right? So I just copy this. I head to my responsive.css. I'll just paste that right here. Now I'm going to give this a display of none. I'll save that. Now when I return back to the web page, I'm going to see that anchor tag is no longer there. That's because we've given it a display of none. And you're going to notice that when the screen size goes less than 1025 pixels, that container is going to have a display of none and it's no longer there. Now we'll continue to reduce further and reduce further. You're going to notice that before we get to the next breakpoint, these items inside this navbar start to over compress. Okay, now just before we get to we're at 772, we've not gotten to the next breakpoint, which is 768. The items of this navbar start to actually compress. So what we are going to do before we get to 768, we are going to reduce the padding at the left and the right hand side. Okay, remember that in our style of CSS file, we give this nav a padding of 5% left and right, 0 top and bottom. So we just reduce that padding. So I'll go to my responsive.css file. Down here I'm going to say nav. I'll give it a padding top and bottom. I'm still going to have a padding of 0. The left and right is going to have a padding of about 3%. I'll save that. Now when I return back to the web page, you're going to notice that when I start to expand this, we're going to have the appointment button for screen size that have 1024 pixels. When I start to reduce, you're going to notice that the appointment button is going to disappear because we'll give that container in display of none, and the padding of you can notice right here on the left hand side, the padding of the navbar is going to reduce to as we go through that breakpoint. Okay, so next, for small screen devices, I want this navigation bar to always be fixed at the top of the web page. Okay, so I'm going to add a position of fix to it. So I'll give this a position of fix, top of 0, left of 0. Then I'm going to give it a width of 100%. Now, since it's actually fixed, I don't want any item to overlap it. Okay, so I'm going to give it a Z index of 999. I'll save that. Now, when I return back to the web page, you're going to notice that this navbar is now absolutely fixed at the top of the web page. You can no longer scroll this navbar off the viewport. Okay, now next, what I want to work on is that since this link has started to actually compress in this navigation bar, so what I want to do is I want to actually position this link underneath this navigation bar. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to target the nav links. I'll say nav.nav links. Remember, we'll give you another list, a class of nav links. I'll give it a position of fixed, top of 0, right of 0, width of 60%. Then to actually see where it's occupied, I'm going to give it a background color of red. I'll save that. Now when I return back to the web page, you can notice that these links are up here, they are positioned up here. Okay, but you see, we have a problem. We don't want this link to start at the absolute top. Okay, we want these links to start after the navigation bar. Remember that the navigation bar has a height of 60 pixels. Okay, you can see it right here in our style of CSS file. So instead of giving this a top of 0, I'm going to give it a top of 60 pixels. That way it's going to start after the navigation bar, just underneath the navigation bar. Okay, so next, I want the links to be arranged vertically down. Okay, we don't want the links to be arranged horizontally anymore. For small screen devices, we want them to be arranged vertically. So what we are going to do, we're going to give this a flex direction. I'm going to use column, and as for the background color, I'm going to give it this background color up here, this light blue background color. So I just copy this. I head to my responsive.css file. Now instead of red, I'll just paste that background right there. And when I head back to the web, you're going to notice that the links are now arranged vertically. So next, I want these items to have a height of 100 VH. Now this is going to ensure that for every device you view these links on, they are going to have a height of 100 VH. They're going to have the height of the device. Okay, you can see right now that the height now stretches down to the bottom. Okay, next I want to add a gap to these links, and also I want to align them center. So I'm going to say I want to give this an align items of center. That's going to ensure that the links are actually at the center. They are centered horizontally. And I want to add a gap to each of the link, a gap of 40 pixels. I'll save that. And when I return back to the web page, you can see the links are looking really good. And when we reduce the screen size for that, let me just basically take this to iPhone 12, and you can see it looks good on mobile devices. So what we are going to work on next is that we want to actually position an hamburger menu icon up here. Okay, so when the user clicks on that hamburger menu icon, this menu is going to actually slide in from the right hand side. Okay, then when it clicks on it, it's going to slide back in. So let's do that. So but first of all, let's quickly create a hamburger icon. So I'll go back to my index.html file. Just inside this nav bar, inside this nav right here, just underneath this nav right, I want to create a div. I'll give this div a class of hamburger menu. Now inside this hamburger menu, I'm going to have 3 span. I'm going to copy that down, 1, 2. I'll save that. Now I'll copy this class and I head to my style.css file. Just copy that. I'll go to my style.css file. Now just after this nav right here, I'm going to paste that right here. First off, I'm going to give this hamburger menu a cursor of pointer. I'll save that. Then I'll just copy this and paste that underneath here, because the most important thing is the span in there. That's what is going to actually be displayed to the user. Then I'll give each of this span a width of 25 pixels. Height, I give it 3 pixels. Then I want a margin between each of the span, a margin 5 pixels top and bottom, 0 left and right. A background color of let me use dark gray. And lastly, border radius, I use 10 pixels. I'll save that. And when I return back to the web page, I'll just get rid of this. Now you're going to notice that we cannot actually see the hamburger menu icon here. Even when we go to mobile devices, we still cannot see the hamburger menu icon. Now the reason for that is that span tags by default are inline level elements. Okay, now when there's no content inside this span tag, they are not going to be displayed to the UI. Okay, now these span tags are only going to be visible to the UI if I add an item. If I add, maybe I add something like HHH and I save that. When I return back to the web, you can see we have that HHH right there. Okay, because span tags are only going to be displayed to the UI when they have content inside the tag. Okay, now to actually solve this problem, we're going to give this a display of block. I'll save that. And now the web page is going to assume that they are block level elements. Okay, so we can actually add width and height to them. So when I return back to the web page, you can see that hamburger menu icon right there at the top right corner. So next, what I want to do is that for last screen device, when we go back to last screen, you're going to notice that we have the hamburger menu icon right here. We only want this hamburger menu icon to be shown to the user when the user is actually on mobile device, actually viewing the web page on a mobile device or tablets, like screens that are less than 768 pixels. Okay, so what I'm going to do is that for last screen devices, I'm going to give you a display of none. It's only going to be visible for small screen devices. So head back to my standard CSS file. Right here, I'm going to add a display of number. First of all, let me quickly reduce the opacity. I'll give this an opacity of 0.7. It's going to actually make the hamburger menu icon look better. Then I'll give it a display of none. Now when I return back to the web page, you notice that for last screen device and for small screen device, you cannot actually see this hamburger menu icon. Okay, so I'll just copy this class. I copy this. Then I head to my media queries. Then underneath this place, I'm going to paste that right here. Then for screens that are less than 768, oh sorry, I've been seeing 768 pixels for 1024 pixels, not 768 pixels. For screen size that are less than 1024 pixels, because the media queries we are applying right now is for screens that are 1024 pixels and lower. Okay, so for screens that are 1024 pixels and lower, I want this to have a display of block. Okay, I'll save that. Now when I return back to the web page, you're going to notice that when I take this to responsive and I start to increase, I'm going to notice that this thing is going to really be visible when we go less than 1024 pixels. Then we can now see the hamburger menu icon and this right here. Okay. So next, what I'm going to work on is that I don't want this menu to be open by default. I want when the user clicks on this hamburger menu icon, it's going to slide in from the right. So first of all, we have to get rid of this menu by default. To do that, I'm going to give these nav links. I head to my style of CSS file. Here's that nav links. I'll give these nav links a transform. I'll use translate X of 50. Let me just give it 50% first. When I save that and return back to the web page, I'm going to notice that part of this nav links is actually inside the right hand side. Okay, part of the nav links is actually gone. So what we want is that we want it to be completely gone. So we're going to give it 100%. So I'm going to use 100%. I'll save that. And when I return back, I'm going to notice that we cannot actually see that nav links. Okay, so next I'm going to create an active class. So when someone clicks on this, I'm going to add that active class. It's going to slide in from the right hand side. So let's do that. So inside my style of CSS, I'm going to create a class called nav. Let me just call it nav open. And this point is going to have a transform translate X of 0, which is basically just taking it back to its original position. Okay, I'll save that. Now I'm going to go to my index.html file. Now I'm just going to add that nav open to this right here. I'll say add this open right here. I'll save that. Now when I return back to the web page, I'm going to notice that this nav links actually open. That's because we've added that active class of open to it. When I remove that class, that open class, you're going to notice that it's no longer there. Okay, so we are now going to use JavaScript to actually add and remove the class. That's what we're going to use JavaScript to do. So I'm going to go to my index.html file. Just scroll down. Now just before my body tag, I'll create a script tag. So inside this script, I'm going to target 2 items. First of all, the button we are going to click to actually open the nav links, and also we're going to target the nav links. So which button are we going to click? It's going to be this hamburger menu. Okay, so I'm going to use an ID. I just give it ID of menu button. Okay. Then I also have to add an ID to the nav links. Okay, so I'll give this ID of nav links. I'll save that. Now in my JavaScript, I have to target those 2 elements. Inside my script, I'm going to say const. I'm going to call this menu button is equals to documents dot get element by the ID name. Then I'll pass in that menu button. Now what this code is going to do is actually going to get that menu button. It's going to set it to this variable right here. Now we won't want to actually perform any action to this menu button. We just call this variable we created. Okay, so down here I'm going to say const links is equals to documents dot get element by the ID name. Which element do we want to get? This nav link. So I'll just copy this and I'll paste that inside my JavaScript. Paste that right here. Cool. So next, how do we know when the user clicks on this button? We are going to do that using JavaScript event listeners. So down here I'm going to say menu button dot add an event listener. Now there are lots of event listener: mouse over, click event listener, load event listener. But in this case, we want to listen for a click event when someone clicks on the menu button. Now when the user clicks on this menu button, sorry, not cancel, clicks on this menu button, I want to run a function called open menu. Okay. Now I'm down here. I'm going to create that function. I'm going to say function open menu. So what I want to do is I want to actually add that open class. That open class we created in our CSS. This open class that has a transform translate X of 0. Okay. So I want to add that open class to these links right here. Okay. So I'm going to say links dot class list dot add what? Add the open class. I save that. And when I return back to the web page, when I click on this, it's going to open it up. Okay. But the problem we have is that when I click on it again, it's not going to close it up. Okay. That's because we are only adding a class. We're not telling it to actually add and remove the class. To tell JavaScript to add and remove the class, instead of add, we're going to make use of toggle. I'll save that. And when I return back to the web page, when I click on this, it's going to open it up. When I click on it again, it's going to close it up. As you can see right now, it's not actually sliding in from the right. That's because we've not added a transition to it. Okay. So I'm going to go back to my style of CSS. So I'm going to add a transition to these nav links. I'm going to say transition. For the transform property, I'm going to add a transition of 0.5 seconds is in out, or let me just use 0.6. I'll save that. Now when I return back to the web, when I click on this, it's going to slide in from the right. When I click on it, it's going to slide back in. I want to check it on other device. Let me check on iPhone 12. When I click on this, it's going to slide out. When I click again, it's going to slide back in. Now with that, we are done making the navigation bar responsive. So let's start working on making the hero content responsive. So I just go back to my index.html file. Remember, we commented this off, so I'll just simply just uncomment this. Just get rid of these comments. I'll save that. Now when I return back to the web page, I notice right now that this is very, very unresponsive. Okay, so let's actually start making it responsive. First of all, we have to trace the breakpoint where it starts getting unresponsive. Okay, so I'm going to start checking that. Then the navbar is still not responsive. What's happening there? What the hell is happening with that navigation bar? Okay. Oh no. We're not supposed to add the transform translate to the nav links on desktop. We're supposed to add it on mobile. Okay. That's why the navbar is still unresponsive, because for last screen device, what's happening right now is that for last screen devices, these nav links are having a transform translate of 100%, which means it's going to the right hand side, but they are supposed to be here. That's why. So just also copy that one I gave, this one, just cut this off. I'll save that. I'll just head to my responsive.css. I'll just paste that underneath here. I'll save that. Yeah, this is how it's supposed to be. That's my bad. Sorry. So when we start to reduce the screen, I'm going to notice that at 1024 pixels, everything starts to actually shrink a lot. Okay. So what we are going to do is, I remember we gave this hero content a display of flex. We gave this item and this item a display of flex to arrange them side by side. Now we're going to give them a flex direction of column. Okay. So I head to my style.css file. I'll just scroll down. Then I'll look for that hero content. Yeah. I'll copy this style right here. I head to my responsive.css. So I just paste that. I'll paste down this hamburger menu style. Then I'll give this a flex direction. I'm going to use column. I'll save that. Now you're going to notice that when I reduce the screen size within less than 1024 pixels, it's going to get a flex direction of column. You're going to notice that they're going to be arranged vertically. Okay, you're going to notice that this image starts to actually overflow from the container. Now this is where the container ends, and now this image is actually overflowing the container. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give the container and this hero content a height of auto, also the image a height of auto. Okay, so I'm going to give this a height. I'm going to use auto. Then also I'll just look for the image style. Here's the style for that image. The hero right. I'll just copy this. Remember, initially we give the image height of 100V, so you have to change that height to auto. So I'll paste that here. I'm going to give the image a height of auto. I'll save that. Now when I return back to the web page, I'm going to notice that the image actually looks better this way. Okay, when we reduce, the image is actually going to respond to the screen size and it's going to be fully responsive. When we increase, the image is also going to increase with the screen size. So next, I'm going to add a gap between this hero left and this image right here. Okay, so inside my hero content, I'm going to add a gap of 20 pixels. And when I return back to the web, you're going to see that there's now a gap between these two items. Let me increase that gap to about 30 pixels. Let me just increase that to 30. Yeah, I think it's better this way. Just use 25. Just use 25. Yeah, that's the sweet spot. So next, we're going to make this hero left actually responsive. Okay, so we're going to target that class. So I'll just copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. And then I'm going to say hero.hero left. First of all, I'm going to give this a test align of center. I'll save that. And that's going to ensure that the items are actually at the center. They are not at the left hand side. Okay. For last screen devices, it's okay for them to be at the left hand side. Okay. Because we want them to maintain this line right here. But for small screen devices, we want them to be at the absolute center. Now you're also going to notice that the H2 tag is actually going to get bigger. Okay. For last screen device, very okay. But when we start to reduce to small screen device, the H2 tag is obviously going to be too big, okay, for these small screen devices. So what we are going to do, we are going to actually slightly reduce the font size of this H2, okay. So I'll just copy this, I'll paste this underneath here, then just target the H2 tag in there. I'll give this H2 tag a font size. I'll use 3 and that's going to ensure the H2 tag is actually smaller for small screen devices. But we are not actually done here. We have to actually ensure it actually looks good on mobile device. We're going to go to something like iPhone 12. Check out the webpage on iPhone 12. You're going to see that the H2 tag is extremely large for this mobile device, okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to reduce the font size further. So I just go back here, copy this. I just copy this with the H2. I'll go down here. I've not added a media query here, so I'm going to say add media max width. This time I'm going to be max width of 768 pixels. Then I'm going to give this a font size. I'll use 1.8 rem. 1.8 rem is going to be okay. Yeah, that's way better. You can notice it looks really good. Now when I go to iPad mini, let me go to iPad mini. Yeah. Or you know what, let's just keep it at 2 rem for tablets. Let's use 2 rem. 2 rem for tablets. Yeah, looks okay. Then for mobile devices, let me just copy this. As for mobile phones, which is 600 pixels, I'll use that 1.8 rem. That way it's going to have a different font size for desktop and for mobile device, okay. Just go to iPhone 12. Yeah, looks really, really good. So next, let's work on this big tag. I simply just want to add styles for this big tag for mobile devices, okay. For tablets, they look really okay. So I'll just drag this down. Instead of H2, I'm going to add the paragraph tag. I'm going to give this a font size of 0.95 rem. Yeah, looks really, really good. Looks really, really good. And with that, we have completely made this Ego section fully responsive. Let me expand. Yeah, I want to click on this, go to open our side menu. We'll click on it again, it's going to close it back up. So next we are going to start working on the about section, okay. So I'm going to go to my index.html file. Just go to my index.html file. I'm going to close up this section right here. I'm done here. Then I'm going to create another section. I'm going to give this section a class of about section. And the about section is going to have 2 components. First of all, the first component is going to have this what we offer right here, and also it's going to have this other component right here that actually talks about the hospital, okay. So we're going to create a div. Inside this section, we'll create a div, and this div is going to have a class of what we provide. And after that, we'll create another div. This other div is going to have a class of about us. Now this what we provide container right here is going to represent this first part of this about us right here. This what we provide. While this second part, this about us, is going to represent this part right here. This part right here with this image and these items right here on the right hand side. So first of all, let's work on this first part. Okay, this is what we provide. So inside this div right here, inside this what we provide div, I'll create another div that's going to have a class of info. Inside this info content, I'm going to have another div that's going to have a class of icon container. Then inside this div, we're going to have an icon. The first icon is going to have a class of fast clock. And after this icon div container, I'm going to have another div that's going to have a class of details. And inside this details container, I'm going to have 2 p tags. The first p tag is going to say 247 advanced care. Then we're going to have another p tag. The second p tag is simply going to say expert care from trusted medical specialist. Okay, so I'll just copy this. I'll drag this down twice. 1, 2. For this other p tag right here, I'll just get rid of this. Then I'll paste this right here. Then for this one, get rid of this one. I'll paste this right here. Then this one is going to be, get results online. Then I'll just paste in the last one right here. I'll save that. I have to update the icons. This other icon is going to be fastfire user MD. And this other icon is going to be fastfire laptop medical. I'll save that. Now when I return back to the web page and when I scroll down, you're going to see those items I just added right here. Advanced care, specialized service, get results online. You see these 3 icons we just added right here. So let's actually start applying styles to these elements. First of all, I just copy this about section class thing. I'll copy this. I head to my style.css file. Scroll down, just paste that down here. I'm going to give this a margin, top and bottom of 60 pixels. Left and give it a margin of 0. I'll copy that. Paste that underneath here again. This time I want to target this container inside this about section. This is what we provide, okay? So I just copy this what we provide. I head to my style.css file. I'll paste that right here. I want to give this container a display of grid. I'll give it a grid template columns. Repeat. Auto fit. Then min max, which is basically minimum maximum. A minimum of 300 pixels. I want each of the items to have a minimum width of 300 pixels and maximum of 1 FR. I'll save that. And when I return back to the web page, you're going to notice that these items are now arranged in a row base, okay? Now when I reduce the screen size, you're going to notice that they are going to adjust accordingly, okay? And when I start to increase, you're going to notice that for this screen size, going to be 2 are going to be arranged side by side. And when I increase, it's going to be 3 arranged side by side. Now that's what the min max auto fit is going to do, okay? It's going to ensure that the items are actually going to respond to the screen size. If it's possible for the web page to accommodate all 3 items, then they are going to be accommodated and they're going to have a minimum width of 300 pixels. But if the screen size is too small to accommodate all 3 items, the next one is going to fold down, okay? You're going to notice that for mobile device, when I reduce this to completely mobile, you're going to notice that we're going to have only 1 item per row. 1, 2, 3. The right item are going to be underneath the next one, okay? And this is a very easy way to make your layout responsive. So next, I want to see where each of these items are occupying, okay? So I'm going to add a background color to it. Remember that inside these, what we provide, each of them are inside the info container. Each of these items are inside the info container. So I'm going to target this info container. So I'll just go back to my style.css file, copy this. I'll paste this underneath here. I'll just target the info container, info. I'll give this info container a background color of red. I'll save that. And when I return back to the web, I'm going to tell each of them has a background color of red, okay? Now to actually add the magic between them, I'm going to give them a gap. So I just give this grid container a gap of 20 pixels. And that's going to ensure that each of the items inside this grid are going to have a gap of 20 pixels between them. But the items are actually too close to the edges, so we have to add a padding on the left hand side and the right hand side, okay? So I just go back to my style.css file. I'm going to add a padding. Top and bottom, I'm going to apply a padding of 10. Left and right, a padding of 10%. I'll save that. And when I return back to the web, I'm going to notice that there's now a padding at the left hand side and the right hand side of this container. So I'll get rid of this background column now. Just get rid of this. For the info, it's also going to have a display of grid and a grid template columns of 60 pixels, 1 FR. I'm going to add a gap between the items. I'm going to add a gap of 15 pixels. I'll save that. And I return back to the web. You're going to notice that these items are now in the grid display, okay? And the grid template column of 60 pixels, 1 FR added is going to ensure that this icon container, remember that this info container is divided into 2 parts. There's this icon container and there's this details right here. So the first item, which is the icon container, is going to have a width of 60 pixels, and this one is going to have a fraction of 1 FR. Okay, so next let's actually style this icon container. So I'll go back to my style.css file. Head back to my style.css file. I'll just copy this. I'll paste this underneath here. Then I'll copy that class from my index.html file, this icon container class. I'll paste that right here. Now, since this icon container already has a width of 60 pixels on this grid depth with column, I'll just give it a height of 60 pixels. A background color of this hair's color right here. I'll save that. And when I return back to the web page, you can notice that this item now has a background color. You can see that light background color on it, okay? But the icons are not actually at the center. So let's actually ensure these icons are at the center and actually increase the font size of the icon. Now, to ensure these icons are at the center, I'm going to give this container a display of grid. Now use a place items. I'm going to use center. Then to actually increase the font size, I'm going to give it a font size of 1.1 rem. I'll save that. Now when I return back to the web page, you're going to notice that these icons are now actually at the center of this icon container. I'll just quickly add a border radius around this icon container. So I'm going to give this a border radius. I'm going to use 5 pixels. I'll save that. And that's actually going to ensure that the edges of this icon container are actually curved. Now we don't want this icon container. We don't want all of them to have this kind of yellow color, okay? We want this one to have its own unique color. In the finished project, you're going to notice that this one has that yellow background color, this one has something like a pink background color, and this one has something like a light green background color, okay? So we want each of these icon containers to have a unique background color. So what we are going to do, we're going to go to our index.html file. I'm going to add unique ID to the other icon containers, okay? For the second one, I'm going to add an ID of box 2. Now just copy this. Now add it to the last icon container. Paste that right here. Then this one is going to be box 3. I'll save that. Now just copy these ID names. I'll target these ID names. I'll go to my style.css file. Down here I'm going to say pound. I'll paste in that ID name. Then also I'll just copy this. I'll drag this down. Then instead of box 2, I'm going to say box 3. This box 2 is going to have a background color of this hair's color right here, while the box 2 is going to have a background color of this hair's color right here. I'll save that. Now when I return back to the web page, I'm going to notice that each of these icons has their own unique background color. Alright, cool. So next we're going to style up this 2 paragraph tag, okay? I remember that these 2 paragraph tags are actually p tags, okay? So we want to give each of them their own unique style. So we have to make use of the first child and the last child, okay? So I'll go back to my style.css file. I just copy this info right here. I'll paste that right here. Remember that these 2 p tags are inside a container called dts. So I'll copy these dts. I head to my style.css file. I'll paste that right here. Then I want to target the p tag in there. Now I want to give each of the p tag different styles. So I'm going to select them using the first and last child, okay? So I want to say p tag. I want the first child. And I want to give this a font weight. I use 600. So I just copy this and I'll drag that down. I want to target the last child as the last p tag. So last child. For this one, I don't want to give it a font weight of 600. I just want to give it a color of dark gray. I'll save that. When I return back to the web page, I'm going to notice that these p tags are looking really, really good. So next, we can start working on the About Us section. Okay, that's this section underneath this how it works. Okay, let's start working on that. So I head back to my index.html file. I'll just wrap up everything in this, what we provide. I'll wrap everything up. Now underneath this one, I already created this About Us div. So inside this div, I want to create another div. Now this div is going to have a class of left. And we're going to create another div underneath this div. This is going to have a class of right. And this div left is going to represent the items that's going to be at the left hand side of the About Us, which is basically the image, and this right is going to represent the items that are going to be at the right hand side. Inside this div left, I'm going to add an image, and we're going to go into the images folder. I'm going to access the, where is that image? About image.jpg. Then the author is going to say About Us, and inside this div right, I'm going to create another div. It's going to have a class of info, and inside this I'm going to have a h2 tag. This h2 tag is going to have this text in it: welcome to Medcare Central Hospital. And after this h2 tag, I'm going to have a p tag. It's going to have this text in it. After this p tag, I'm going to have another p tag. There's going to have this other text in it. Okay, now after this info div, I'm going to create another div, and this div is going to have a class of stats. container. And inside this div, I'm going to have another div that's basically going to have a class, which is going to be the item of the stats container, an item in there. So I just call it item. And each of these items will have a p tag. And this first one is simply going to say 10,000 plus. And the second p tag is going to say happy patient. Now just copy this and drag this down multiple times. 1, 2, 3. The second stat is going to say 250 plus. And the title is going to be experts doctors. The third stat is simply going to say 15 plus, and the title is going to be years of excellence. The last stat is going to say 50 plus, and the title is going to be awards and accreditations. I'll save that. And now we turn back to the web page. You're going to notice that we have all those items right here, and the image is very, very large. You can see these items at the bottom of the web page, and the image is very, very large. Let's actually start styling these items. Now here I'm going to say .about section. Now I want to target the about source, so I just copy that class name right here. I'll copy this. I add to my style.css, so I'll paste that file here. First of all, I want this about source to occupy a width of 80%. Okay, so I'm going to give it a width of 80%. Now to ensure it's at the center, I'll give it a margin of auto. I'll give this a display of flex. I want the left hand side and the right hand side of the about source to be arranged side by side. Okay, then I'll align the items vertically at the center. Now I want both the container on the left hand side and the right hand side to occupy a flex of 1. Now when I go back to the full project, for the completed project, I'm going to notice that this area this image is occupying and this area this text are occupying are actually equal. Okay, so I want them to occupy 50-50%. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give the left and the right a flex of 1. So I'll copy this, I'll paste that underneath here. I'll target the left hand side. I'll give this left hand side a flex of 1. Then I'll just drag that down. Then this one changes on to right. I'll give it a right of 1. Next, I'll quickly style up the image. Remember that the image is inside this about us left. Okay, so we're going to target that left. So I'll just copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. Then I'll just target the image in there. Now, since we already told the about us left to occupy flex of 1, which means it's going to occupy half of that about us container. So we just simply have to tell the image to occupy 100% of its parent container. So I'll give this image a width of 100%. I'll just add a height to it. I'll give it a height of 500 pixels. I'll save that. And now I return back to the web page. I'm going to notice that this image is now actually styled. It has a height of 500 pixels and it's occupying the width of its parent container. Okay, but you can see that the web page is not actually looking really good. Even the image is not looking really great. So what I want to do is I want to actually give this left and right a background color so you can actually see where they are occupying. So I'll give this one a background color. I'll use red. Then I'll give this one a background color. I'll use blue. Now returning back to the web page, I'm going to notice that these items, you see this one is having a background color of blue, but it's being covered by the image, but it's actually blue. Then this one right here, based on the fact that we give them a flex of 1, they are occupying equal area. Okay, and since they are occupying 50-50%, the image is occupying 100% of this left hand side. So I just get rid of those background color. Now you're going to notice that the image is not actually looking really great. So I'm going to give it an object fit of cover to fix the aspect ratio. Also, I'm going to give it a little border radius at the edges. So I give the image a border radius of 10 pixels. Then I'll give it a object fit. I'll use cover. I'll save that. Now I'm turning back to the web page. I'm going to notice that the image is actually looking better this way. Okay. So next I'm going to give this about us container. This is what we offer container, a little bit of margin, a little bit of breathing space because you are too close to each other. So I just go up to that, what we provide container. Where is it? I give this a margin bottom. I use 40 pixels. Now you're going to notice that there's now a margin between this about us right here and this what we offer up here. See that margin right here. So next we have to add a gap between the items at the right hand side and this image. Okay. So to do that, I'm just going to give this about source container a gap property. Add a gap of 40 pixels, a background color of light blue, a padding of, let me use 10 pixels. Now I'm going to add a box shadow to it. Box shadow of 0, 2 pixels, 4 pixels, RGBA 0, 0, 0, then opacity 0.1. I'll save that. And now we turn back to the web page. You're going to see that this is actually looking really good. So next I want to target the H2 tag. So I'm just copy this because basically at the right hand side, copy this right side styles. Paste that right here now. Then I'll target the info container. Remember that inside our right hand side we have this container of info that contains all these details right here. Okay, the first details. Why we have another one called statistics. Okay, so we are targeting this first one which has a class name of info. I want to target this H2 tag inside this container. Okay, so I just go back to my web page and I'll target the H2 tag inside that info. I'll give this H2 tag a font size. I'll use 2.5 rem, a color of dark blue, and last I'm going to add a margin bottom to it to add margin between the H2 tag and a P tag underneath it of 10 pixels. Cool. And now we turn back to the web. You're going to see that the H2 tag is completely styled and it's looking good. So next we have to style this P tags. Okay, so I'll just target that. I'll just copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. I'll give this a color of dark gray. I'll save that. When I return back to the web, I'm going to see that this text now has a color of dark gray, but the font size is actually okay the way it is. They look really good. So what I'm going to do next is that I want to target this first P tag and give this first P tag a margin bottom, but I don't want to actually add that style to the second P tag. Okay, I only want to apply a margin bottom to this P tag, and if I use the P tag, it's going to target both of them. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the P first of type. Now I could use the first child pseudo class, but it's not going to work because this P tag is not actually the first child of this container. The first child of this container is this H2 tag right here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make use of the P first of type. That's the first P tag in that container. I'll say colon first of type. I'll give this a margin bottom of 20 pixels. I'll save that. And now we turn back to the web. You're going to see that there's a margin between these two P tags now. Okay, because we've given this first one a margin bottom property. So let's start styling the items of this statistic container. So now I just copy this. I'll paste this underneath here. Now I want to target the stats container, so I just copy that class name from my HTML. I'll copy this and I'll just paste that right here. Okay, now I'm going to give this a display. I'll give it grid template columns. I'll give it 1FR. And this is going to ensure that we have 2 items in a row at a time. We're always going to have 2 items in a row. Okay, I'll give this a margin top and bottom 20 pixels, left and right 0. I'm going to add a gap of 20 pixels. I'll save that. And now we turn back to the web. You're going to see that these items are now arranged side by side. That 1FR grid template column we give is going to ensure that every time I'm always going to have 2 items side by side. Okay, 1FR. So next I'll start styling the individual items. So I'll just copy this. Now target the item container inside this tags container. Remember that each of them has a class of items. So I'm going to target that item class. Okay, so I'll say dot the item. Item. I'll give them a text align of center and a color of dark gray. I'll save that. Return back to the web. You're going to notice that they actually now the center. We've centered them and they have a color of gray. So next I'm going to add a background color to each of this container. Now I'm going to say background color. I'll paste in this hex color right here. I'll save that. And now return back to the web. You're going to notice that this item now has a background color. Okay, so but it doesn't really look good, so I'm going to apply a padding to them. I'll give this a padding of 15 pixels and a border radius of 10 pixels. I'll save that, and you can see they are looking way better this way. So next I'm going to style up these 2 P tags in there. And for the first P tag, I'll just copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. I'll say P. Now since we only have P tags inside that container, we can make use of the first and last child. Okay, so I'll say I want to target the first child of this container, okay, which is the first p tag. I'll give it a font weight of 600, a font size of 1.8 rem, and a margin bottom of 5 pixels. Then down here, target the last child, p last child. I'll simply just give this last child a font size of 0.9 rem. I'll save that. When I return back to the web, you're going to notice that these items are completely styled and they look really, really good. But in the final project, these items have different background color, okay? So let's actually do that. To do that, we'll just add a unique ID to the items, okay? For this one, I'm going to give it an ID of box. This is the second box, box 2. Now copy that. I'll paste that on the third item. I'll call this one box 3. And I'll paste on the last item. I'll call this one box 4. I'll save that. Now in my style of CSS, so I'll just target those IDs. So down here, I'm going to say hash box 2. I'll give it the background color of this hex color right here. Then I'll just copy that and drag that down. Then this one is going to be box 3. I'll give it a background color of this hex color right here. Then I'll drag that down again. Then this one is going to be box 4. Then I'll give this one this hex color right here. I'll save that. Now when I return back to the web page, you're going to notice that each of these boxes now has their own unique background color and they are looking really, really good. But we have a problem. It's not obviously going to be responsive. When we try to shrink, you're going to notice that this is not actually responsive. So let's actually work on making it responsive. I'll just right click and go to my inspect tab. First of all, let's trace out where it starts to get unresponsive. So I'll just drag this up, then just drag up, then we'll start to compress. So the first thing we're going to do is that at 1280 pixels, we're just going to increase the width of this container, okay? Remember, we gave this container, where is that, a part of container? We gave this container a width of 80%, okay? So we're just going to increase that width. So I'll just copy this. I'll head back to my responsive.css up here. Let's go to my, I've not created a media query yet, so I'm going to say add media. Max width. This one is going to be 1280 pixels, okay? Now just paste that in here. I want to give this a width of 90%. I'll save that. And I return back to the web page. I'm going to notice that for less than, when it goes less than 1280 pixels, you're going to notice that the width is going to increase, okay? You can see it right there. So I'll start to reduce it again. And just before we get to 1040 pixels, you're going to notice that just before we get there, you're going to see the items of this about us start to compress. Okay, so what we are going to do at this point, we're going to give it a flex direction of column. So I head back to my responsive.css. I'll copy this again. I'll take that down here. Now what I want to do is I want to arrange those items vertically. Okay, so I'm going to give this a flex direction. I'll use column. I'll save that. Now when I return back to the web page, when it goes less than 1024 pixels, you're going to notice that it's going to get a flex direction of column. They're going to be arranged vertically. Next, I'm going to give this image a height of auto. Okay, remember initially we gave this image a height of, I think we gave the image a height of, give the image a height of 500 pixels. Okay, so now we're going to give the image a height of auto. That way the image is going to adjust based on the screen size it's been viewed on. So I just head back to my responsive.css. I'll copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. Then I'm going to say dot the left hand side, then target the image in there and give this image a height of auto. I'll save that. I'm going to turn back to the web page. I'm going to notice that this image now grows and occupies. I'm going to notice that the more I reduce the screen size of this device, the more the image is going to shrink. The image is going to shrink based on the size of the device it's being filled up. It's basically having a height of auto. Now you're going to notice that the gap between this container right here, this info container and this image is too much. So just quickly reduce that. So I'll go to my about source. I'll reduce the gap to 20 pixels. I'll save that. And that's way better. That's way better. So next, what we want to do is I want this what we provide section to occupy up to this point. Okay, the same line as this about section right here. I don't want this to be too tiny, so just basically just want to increase the width it's occupying. Remember that we gave this a, where is that? We gave this a padding of 10% left and right, so just basically just reduce that padding. So I'll copy this class name. I head to my responsive.css and I want to apply these styles for tablets and below. Okay, so I'll paste that right here. Now the padding is going to remain 0 top and bottom, but left and right is going to be 5%. I'll save that. And when I return back to the web, you're going to notice that it's going to grow and occupy more. And this actually looks better for tablets and mobile phones. So next, I'll just reduce the font size of this, how it works. Okay, so I just go back to my responsive.css. I'll copy this, I'll paste that underneath here. Then I'll give this a font size of 0.9 rem. And this is going to ensure that that text actually looks good on smaller devices. I'm going to notice that this text is actually smaller for smaller devices. When I increase the size of this screen, I'm going to know that the text is going to be larger. But for small screen devices like mobile phone, let me go to iPhone 12. I'm going to know that the text is actually smaller, and this actually looks more better. Okay, so next I'm going to ensure that the paragraph tags of this info section actually looks good on mobile device. Okay, we have to actually reduce it. You have to reduce the font sizes for mobile devices so that they look really good on mobile devices, just in case you want to actually add this to your portfolio. I'm going to start with this paragraph tag right here, this p tag right here. I'm going to reduce it slightly a bit. So I'll go to my responsive.css. Now this tag is going to be applied for mobile phone. So down here I'm going to say dot about section dot about us dot write dot the info container. Now I want to target the p tag in there. I'll give this p tag a font size of 0.95 rem. I just want to reduce the font size slightly a bit. And when I return back to the web, I'm going to see that the text actually reduces a bit. Next, I'm going to apply styles to this p tag right here. This p tag that says 10,000 plus, then this happy patient right here. Okay, so I'll go to my style.css file. I'll just look for those styles, and you can see them right here. Initially, this one has a font size of 1.8 rem, so I'll just reduce that. I'll copy this. I'll head to my responsive.css. I'll paste that in my PGI queries on mobile phones. I'm going to give this one a font size of 1.5 rem. I'll save that. When I return back to the web, I'm going to notice that it's going to reduce to about 1.5 rem. Okay, let's actually reduce this other one a bit. So this one initially has a font size of 0.9 rem. Let's just reduce it to about 0.8 rem. So I'll just copy this. I'll go to my responsive.css. So I'll paste that right here. Then I'll give this a font size, this time around of 0.8 rem. I'll just quickly format the document, format this document, save that, go back to the web. You're going to notice that it actually reduces a bit. Now, this is now fully responsive on mobile devices. Now, when you view this on any mobile device, right now we are viewing this on iPhone 12 Pro. When you view this on any mobile device, it's actually going to look really good. And I just noticed that this styles right here, this specialized service and this get results icon container right here is being overridden by the styles we are giving to these ones right here. Okay, remember we gave this one ID of box 2. I'll give this an ID of box 3. We're also giving these ones ID of box 2, box 3, and box 4. So we have to actually ensure that these styles we are applying to this one, this background color we are applying to these ones, don't override these ones. So what I'm going to do, I'll go back to my style.css file. Now instead of just using box 2, I'm going to use the status container. I have the status container. That way CSS knows only to target this box inside the status container. I'll paste that right here. I'll do the same for this one. Just paste that at the back of this one. Then I'll paste that at the back of this one. I'll save that. That way, it's only going to target the box 2, box 3 inside this stats container. It's not going to override that initial box 2. This initial box 2, box 3 classes we created for the how it works section. So I'll just go back to the, I'm going to say the light green color and this pink color are actually back. So with that, we can basically start working on the services section. Okay, for the service section, we're going to have this right here. We're going to have this header right here, our service, your head, our expertise. And it's going to have this slider right here. We're going to click on this to actually navigate through it, and we're going to see the service offered. We're actually going to achieve this slider using SwiperJS. Let's start creating a service section. So I'll go to my index.html file. I'll just wrap up this about section. So down here, I'll create another section. I'll give this section a class of service section. Inside this service section, I'm going to have a div that's going to have a class of header. And inside this header, first of all, I'm going to have a p tag. This p tag is simply going to say our services. And after that, I'm going to have a h2 tag. This h2 tag is simply going to say your heads our expertise. Now let's start styling them. So I'll just copy this class name. I'll head to my style.css file. I'll paste that down here. I'm going to give this a padding, top and bottom of 60 pixels, left and right of 0. Then I'm going to give this service section a background color of light blue. Now I'm going to target the header, okay? So I'll say dot. I'll just copy that header class we created. This header class. I'll target this. Copy that. I'll head to my style.css, so I'll paste that right here. And the reason I'm not adding service section at the back of this header is because this header is I'm going to actually reuse these styles for other parts of the website, like the testimonial section and stuff. I'm going to reuse these header styles, okay? Because I'm going to reuse the header. That's why I'm making it a general style. For this header, I'm going to give it a text align of center. Then a padding, top and bottom 0, left and right 20 pixels. Now I'm going to target the h2 tag inside this header. So down here, I'm going to say dot header. Then I want to target the h2 tag in there. I want to give the h2 tag a font size of 2.3 rem and a color of dark gray. Now next, I want to target the p tag. So say dot header. I'll target the p tag in there. I want to give the p tag a color of blue, a font weight of 500, and lastly a font size of 1.3 rem. I'll save that, and I return back to the web page. When I scroll down, you're going to notice that this header is completely styled. We've started up the p tag and we've started up the h2 tag, and it looks really good. Next, I'm going to style up the service container and also the individual service card. So I go back to my index.html file. Now after this div, I'll create another div. And this div is going to have a class of service container. Inside this div, I have another div. And this one is going to have a class of service, which is going to represent each of the service card. Now each of these service cards is going to have a div that's going to have a class of icon container. And the icon in this first one is going to have a class of faz, fa, I. And after that, I'm going to have a p tag. I'm going to have a text of I, K. After this, I'll have another p tag. I'm going to have this text in there. Okay. After this p tag, I'm going to have an anchor tag. And this anchor tag is not going to lead anywhere, but it's simply going to say learn more. I'll save that. Now I turn back to the web page. You're going to notice that those items are just added right here underneath this your head to expertise. You can see those items right here. So next, I'm going to style this up with CSS. So I head back to my style.css file. First of all, just copy this service container. I'll copy this. I head to my style.css file. Now here I'm going to say dot service section dot. I'll paste in that service container class. First of all, I'm going to give this a width of 90%. Because I want the container that wraps around the card to have a width of 90%, okay? Then I'll give it margin auto to actually ensure it's at the center. So margin of auto. Then I'm going to target each of the service card. I'll just copy this. I'll paste that right here. Then I'll say dot service card. Let me just call it service card in my HTML. Instead of service, I'll just say service card. It's a better naming convention. Save that. Go back to my style.css file. I want to give this a background color of this hex color right here. A border of 7 pixels, solid white. A border radius of 10 pixels. Then I'm going to add a padding to it. Top and bottom of 30 pixels, left and right of 20 pixels. I'll save that. Now we turn back to the web page. I'm going to notice that this item is completely styled. You can see that box right here is completely styled. So next, we're going to style the individual items inside this box. Okay. First of all, I'll style up the icon container. So I'll just copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. And for the icon container, I'm going to say dot icon container. I'll give this a background color of this hex color right here, a height of 60 pixels, a width of 60 pixels, a color of dark gray, border radius of 10 pixels, and lastly font size of 1.5 rem. I'll save that. Turn back to the web page. You're going to notice that we now have this icon container completely styled right here. You can see the icon is actually larger and that's a background color of a darker pink color. But the icon is not at the center of this container, so let's fix that. So to do that, I'm going to give this icon container a display. I use grid. Then I want to place the items at the center, so I'll say place items. I use center. I'll save that. And now I return back. I'm going to say that icon is now at the center of its container. So next, let's style up this icon text right here. So I'll go back to my style of CSS file. Copy this. Paste that underneath here. I'm going to make use of the P first of type because this P tag is not actually the first child of this container. So I say first of type, which is actually the first of the paragraph tag. I'll give this a font weight of 600, a font size. I'll give it 2M. And so I'll target the second P tag. I'll just copy this. I'll paste that down here. Now say last of type. I'll give this a color of dark gray. Okay, I'll save that. And now we turn back to the web page. I'm going to notice that those items are actually styled and they are looking really, really good. So next, I'm going to style up this lemon anchor tag right here. I'll just copy this. And this time I want to target the anchor tag in there. Use the anchor tag. I'll give this a background color of dark blue, a color of white, a padding, top and bottom 10 pixels, left and right 15 pixels, and lastly border radius of 5 pixels. I'll save that. When I return back to the web page, I'm going to notice that the anchor tag is completely styled, but the anchor tag is too close to this P tag. Okay, so I'm going to add a margin bottom to this P tag. So let's do that. I'll give this last P tag a margin bottom. I'll use 40 pixels. I'll save that. And now I return back to the web page. You're going to notice that this actually looks way better. Now, this is the point where we are going to actually introduce SwiperJS to our project. So I'm going to head over to the SwiperJS official website. I want to say SwiperJS. I head over there. I'm going to click on Get Started. It's going to bring me right here. Installation, we're using npm. Now, we're not going to use npm because we're not working with React or any framework. So we are going to scroll down and use a CDN link. And this is the CDN link. Now, this is the CDN link we are going to use. We are going to copy these two CDN links. This is going to be the link for the CSS. So I just copy this. I copy this. I head to my project. I head to my index.html file. I'll paste my header tag. After this font awesome CDN link, I'll just paste that right here. So I'll go back and get the JavaScript CDN link. So I'll go back there. I'll copy this script tag right here. Go back to my project. Now on top of this, just before this script tag right here, I'll paste that up here. I'll save that. And with that, we have successfully added SwiperJS CDN link to our project. And now we can actually make use of SwiperJS in our project. So up here, I'm going to say const swiper is equals to new swiper. So in here, I'm going to pass the name of the container. It's also wrap around the swiper. So I'm going to call this service swiper. So I'm going to take this class name. I'll take this class name. I'll go up and paste that class name in this container, this service container. It's going to wrap around our swiper. I'll paste that right here. Okay. Now after that, you have to add our swiper configurations. For now, I want 3 slides per view. So I'm going to say slides per view. I use 3. I want a space between each of the swipers. So I'm going to say space between them. I want 30 pixels. So next I'm going to add the navigation. So I just go to the SwiperJS website. I'll scroll down. You can see navigation right here. I'll just copy this. I'll go back to my project. I'll just paste that right here. Now this one is going to be the next button, while this other one is going to be the previous button. Okay, I'll save that. Now I'm going to scroll up and wrap everything, this service card, inside swiper wrapper. So I just cut this. I'll create a div. I'll give this div a class of swiper wrapper. Then inside this swiper wrapper, I'll just paste that service card div right here. So this service card div right here is going to act as each of the swiper slides. So here I'm going to add a class called swiper slide. I'll save that. Now when I return back to the web page, you are going to notice that we have one card right here. So to add more cards, I'll just go back to my project. I'll copy this. I'll drag this down. 1, 2. I'll save that. Now when I go back to the web page, I'm going to notice that we now have 3 cards. I can actually add more. Can add more to it, and we are going to have 4 cards. Now you can see that we have 4 cards. You can see the 4th card right here. Now we don't want that. We don't want our web page to actually start to overflow because of the 4th card. We only want to see 3 cards in the viewport. So what we are going to do, go to our style of CSS file. We are just going to give this service card container overflow. I'll give it hidden. That way any other card that overflows is going to be hidden from the viewport. Now this card container is too close to this header right here. So I'm going to give this header a margin bottom. So I'll go to my header. I'll just give this a margin. So imagine bottom, I'll give it 40 pixels. I'll save that. When I return back to the web, I'm going to notice that there's not a margin between this header and this card right here. Alright, cool. Now the next thing I want to work on is I want to head to small screen devices. You're going to notice that this is not actually responsive for small screen devices at all. We're having 3 cards trying to squish and occupy this small width. Okay, so we have to actually ensure these cards are responsive. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to go to my swiper code, or just go back to my index.html file. Down here I'm going to add breakpoints. So down here I'm going to say breakpoints. And the first breakpoint is going to be 600 pixels. And for this 600 pixels, we only want to show 1 slide. So I'll paste that right here. I'm going to say slides per view. I only want 1. So when the user is viewing this web page on a device that's less than 600 pixels, the user can only see 1 service card. The user can swipe to see the next card. Okay. And the next breakpoint is going to be 768 pixels. Now for this 768 pixels, slides per view, we want 2 cards to be shown to the user. The next one is going to be 1024 pixels. And how many slides per view do we want to display to the user? I want to display 3. That's for screens that are 1024 pixels and above. That's from small laptops and above. You are going to see 3 cards. Okay, so I didn't add a colon here. I'm supposed to add a colon here. I'll save that. Now when I return back to the web, you're going to notice that we still have 3 cards right here. That's because we are telling these items to actually display 3 cards. Remember that up here we said slides per view 3. Okay, so it's still going to display 3. So we have to tell it to display 1 and only display 3 when the breakpoint is above 1024 pixels. So I'll save that. When I go back to my web page, you can see now we only see 1 card right here. When I expand to large screen, we're going to see 3 cards. Okay, now there's actually a 4th card, but we cannot see it. Remember, we give it an overflow of hidden. So we have to either add a pagination or a navigation button. So for this service section, I'm going to make use of a navigation button, and we already have that right here, navigation. So all we have to do is create a button and add these classes to that button so we can be able to navigate the swiper. So I'll scroll up. Now under this swiper wrapper right here, under the swiper wrapper, outside of the swiper wrapper but inside the service swiper, that is inside this container but outside of this swiper wrapper container, I'm going to create a div. I'll create a div here. I'll call this div, I'll give this div a class of button container. And inside this div, I'm going to have a div. I'm going to have a class of custom button. And this first one is going to have an icon in it. The icon is going to have a class of far, arrow, left. Then I'll just copy this and drag this down. This one is going to have a class of far, arrow, right. I'll save that. When I return back to the web page, I'm going to notice that we now have those two buttons right here, arrow left and arrow right. So let's actually style them up. So I'll copy that class, that button container class. I'll copy this. I'll head to my style.css file. I'll just scroll down. I'm going to say .service section .service card. And inside the service card, I want to target a container called buffing container. Okay. I want to give it a display of flex. Justify content, I'll give it center. Then margin top, I'm going to give it 20 pixels. So next I'm going to style each of the buttons. So I'll just copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. And I'll just target the custom button. Say custom button. That's this custom button class inside this. The custom button class inside this button container, this custom button class. Give this a width of 40 pixels, a height of 40 pixels, a background color of blue, color of white, border radius, I'll give it 50%. Then I'll give it a margin. Top and bottom, I want them to have a margin of 0. Then left and right, I want them to have a margin of 5 pixels. And I want a margin between each of the icons. Okay, I'll save that. Now when I return back to the web page, you're going to notice that these styles are not applied. Why are the styles not applied? Okay, button container. Okay, that's because the buttons are not inside the service card. Okay, they're not inside the service card. They're outside of the service card. Okay, so I'll save that. Now when I return back to the web page, I'm going to notice that these buttons are completely styled. You can see those buttons right here. So next, what I want to do is I want to link the swiper button to these buttons right here, because this button, we just created this button. This button are not really going to do anything. When we click on it, they're not going to do anything. So we have to link the swiper button to this button so that we can actually use it to navigate our slide. So to do that, I'm going to copy the swiper slide class name. Remember, this swiper class has a class name of swiper button nest. So I'll copy this class. I'll go up. Then for my arrow right, I'm going to put that next class right here. Then for the arrow left, which is the previous button, I'm going to paste that one right here. I'll save that. And when I return back to the web, you're going to notice that we can no longer see those buttons right here. The reason for that is because by default, the swiper buttons have a position of absolute. Okay, so we have to give them a position of static so that we can actually see them in the document flow. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my style.css. So I'm going to give them a position of static. That way I'm telling them to follow the document flow. Okay, so down here I'll paste that class right here, comma, then I'll paste the next one. This one is going to be next. And I'll give them a position of static, and I'll just add importance to it so it overrides the previous style given to it in the SwiperJS library. I'll go back to the web and you can see those buttons right here. And you are going to notice that we now have two buttons. We have the button we created and we have the swiper buttons as the icon we created, the custom icons we created, and also the icons of the SwiperJS library. So what we are going to do, I'm going to get rid of the SwiperJS icon because we want to use our own icon for the navigation. So to do that, I'm going to go down here. I'll paste that right here. I'm going to say colon after. I'll give this a display of none. Now also do the same thing for the next. I'll paste that right here. Sorry, add that dot. Then I'll paste that right here. I'll say colon after. Then I have to change this previous to next. I'll say next. I'll save that. Now when I go back to the web page, you're going to notice that those icons are gone. We now only have our icons right here. When I click on this, it's going to slide. When I click on previous, it's going to slide back. And with that, we successfully integrated SwiperJS icon library to our project, and we now have our service slider. Okay, So what we're going to work on is that in our HTML, we're going to actually update the details of this card, okay? So I'll go back to my index.html file. Up here, I'll start to update the card for the first one. The first one is going to be eye care. Then the second one is going to be skin care. So I'll say skin care. And the p tag is going to be this paragraph tag right here. Gentle expert skincare to keep your skin healthy. Then the next one is going to be surgical care. Then for the paragraph tag, I just get rid of this. Then I'll just paste this one right here. Advanced precise surgical care, focus on safety and recovery. And for the last one, we're going to have dental care. And the paragraph tag is going to be this paragraph tag right here. Trusted dental service for a clean breath and healthy smile. Alright, cool. Now when I go back to my index.html, I'm going to notice that those items have been updated, and we've not updated the icon. The icon is still the icon. Let's quickly update the icon. For the icon, the second one is going to be fastfire spa. The third one is going to be user nurse. And the last icon is going to be fastfire tooth. I'll save that. Return back to the web page. I'm going to say the icons have been updated. So next, I want to give each of these boxes here individual styles. Okay, I want them to have a different background color, like these ones up here. Okay, so I'll go back to my project. I'll go back to my index.html. I'm going to give each of these service card a unique ID. So for the first one, I'm going to leave it the way it is. Then for this one, I'm going to give it an ID of box 2. So I'll copy that. I'll go to the next one. I'll paste that right here. This one is going to have an ID of box 3. I'll paste it here. This one is going to have an ID of box 4. I'll save that. So I'll go back to my style.css file. I'll just copy up to this point right here in the service container. If I want to target the boxes inside the service container, I'll paste that up here. I'll target the first box, which is box 2. I'll give this a background color of this hash color right here. So I'll copy that and I'll drag that down. I want to target the icon container inside this box 2. So I'll say .icon container. I'll give that a background color of this hash color right here. I'll save that. And I return back to the web page. I'm going to notice that this one has a different background color. Okay. When I click back, I can see that this one has a different background color. It's actually yellow, and the icon container has a darker yellow. So let's do the same for these other two cards. Okay. So I'll go back to my style.css file down here. Down here, I'm going to say .service section, .service container. Now I'll target the box 3. I'll give this a background color of this hex color right here. I'll drag that down. Then I'll target the icon container inside this box 3. And I'll give it a background color of this hex color right here. Now I'm going to repeat the same thing for the box 4. So I'll just copy these two and drag that down. I'll change this to box 4. Change this to box 4. For the box 4, I'm going to give the card a background color of this hex color right here. And I'll give the icon container this hex color right here. I'll save that. And now I return back to the web page. I'm going to say all these boxes now have their own unique color. Okay. And they look really, really good. So next, you have to actually ensure this is actually responsive. So I'll just go to my inspect. I'll scroll down to just quickly also reduce the font size of this H2 tag. Okay. So I just go to my responsive.css. Down here, I'm going to say .header. I want to target the H2 tag in there. Remember that initially we gave this a font size of 2.3 rem. Okay. So I'll just reduce that font size to 1.8 rem. I'll save that. And now return back to the web page. You can notice that the text is actually smaller and looks more responsive this way. And with that, we are basically done working on the service section, and also is very, very responsive. Can you expand the screen? Again, notice that it's going to be responsive. Scroll down because it's going to be responsive. When we go to last screen devices, it's going to be 3 cards, and we can actually navigate through it. When we start to reduce the screen size, it's going to break, and we're going to have 2 cards. Okay, and we can actually navigate through it too. Then when we reduce to mobile devices, it's going to be 1 card. And we can check on other devices. Or check on iPad mini, it looks okay. Check on iPhone 12 Pro Max, I'll just zoom that to 75%. It still looks okay. So next I'm going to start creating this contact or section right here, okay? So I head back to my index.html file. I'll just wrap up this service section. I'm basically done here. Done on this service section. I want to create another section. I'll give this section a class of contact us. And inside this section, I'm going to have two divs. The first div is going to have a class of left, which is going to represent the item that's going to be on the left hand side of the contact us container. Then I'm going to have another div that's going to have a class of right. Then inside this first div, we're going to have a p tag that's simply going to say, got an emergency, we are here to help, contact us now. While inside the second div, I'm going to have a div that's going to have a class of info. And inside this info div, I'm going to have another div that's going to have a class of icon container, which is going to wrap around the icon. And inside this icon container, I'm going to have an icon in here. And this icon is going to have a class of phone. After this icon container, I'll create another div. And this div is going to have a class of info. Instead of me just calling this info, I want to call it info details. And inside this info details container, I'm going to have a p tag. And this first p tag, I'm going to say call us, okay? While the second p tag is going to have this random phone number in there. So I'll just copy this info container. I'll create another one. I'll just copy this. I'll drag that down. Scroll down. The next icon is going to be fastfar. Envelope. Then instead of colors, it's going to say emails. And for the email, just paste in this random email right here, medcare@gmail.com. I'll save that. I'm going to head to my standard CSS file and start applying styles to this contact us section. So I just copy this class name. I'll head to my standard CSS file. I just scroll all the way down. I'll paste that right here. First of all, I'm going to give this a background color of dark blue. A padding, top and bottom, I want a padding of 80 pixels. Left and right, I want a padding of 7%. Then a display of flex. I want the items to be arranged side by side. I align the items vertically center, so I'll give it an align items of center. I'm going to add a gap between the items, a gap of 20 pixels. I'll save that. Now when I return back to the web, you can see those items right here. Okay. Next, I want these two containers to occupy a flex of 1 because I want them to share this container 50-50. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy this, contact us. I'll copy this. I'll paste that right here. Then I'll target the left hand side. I'll give this a flex. I'll give it 1. Then I'll just copy this, drag that down. I'll give this one a flex of 1 to the right hand side. Then I just add a background color so you can see where they are occupying. Background color, I'll give this one blue. Then for this one, background color, I'll give it red. I'll save that. Now when I return back to the web page, I notice where these items are actually occupying. And you can see that they are occupying 50-50% inside this contact us section container. Okay, so next I'm going to start actually styling the left hand side of this contact us section container. So I'll just get rid of these background colors. First of all, I'm going to give this side a font size of 2.5 rem, a font weight of 600, and a color of white. I'll save that. And now we turn back to the web page and notice that text is completely styled. So next, let's target this other side, okay? For the contact us file, I'm going to give it a display. I'll use grid. And I want a gap between the items. I want a gap of 12 pixels. I'll save that. And now we turn back to the web page and notice that these items are now in a grid display and there's now a gap between them, okay? Now I want to target this info container, okay? The info container that houses this icon and this div that wraps around these colors and this phone number right here, okay? So I'm going to target that info container. So I'll just copy this. I'll head back down here. I'll target the info container. Now I want to give this info container a display. I'll give it flex. I'll align the items at the center vertically. Now add a gap of 12 pixels. I'll save that. When I return back to the web, you're going to see these items are now arranged side by side. Okay, so next what I'm going to do, I'm going to focus on styling this icon and the icon container. So I'll go back to my style of CSS file. I'll just copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. I want to target the icon container inside this info container. So I'll copy this class. I head to my style of CSS file. I'll just paste that right here. I'll give this a width of 70 pixels. Height, I'll give it 70 pixels. A background color of blue. I'll give it a color of white. A font size of 2M and a border radius of 8 pixels. I'll save that. Turn back to the web, you can see that this icon container is completely styled, but the icon is not actually at the center. Let's quickly fix that. To fix that, I'll just give it a display. I use grid. Then a place items of center. So place it at the absolute center of the icon container. And you can see the icon is now at the center. So next we're going to target this colors text and this number right here. Okay, the p tags inside this info details container. So I'll just copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. Now target the info details container. That's this info details container that wraps around each of these paragraph tags. Okay, I just simply give it a color of white. Now that's going to ensure that all the text inside this info details container, these two p tags, are going to have a color of white. So I'm going to style the first p tag. So I'll copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. Now target the p tag in there, the first child. I'll give this a font size of 0.9 rem, a font weight of 300, and lastly color of white. Then I'll do the same thing again. I'll just copy this, I'll paste this down here, and I'll target the last child. That's the last p tag, the last child of the info details container. I'll give it a font size of 1.2 rem, then a font weight. I'll use 500. I'll save that. And now return back to the web. You're going to see that these items are completely styled and they look really, really good. So next we have to ensure that they are actually responsive. So I just go to my developer tools. When I scroll down, you can see they are highly unresponsive, very, very unresponsive. So let's actually ensure that they are responsive. So I head to responsive and trace where they start to get unresponsive. I just stretch this out. Then I'll start to reduce the screen size. First of all, for 1024 pixels, I'm just going to reduce the padding on the left and the right hand side. Okay. Remember that in our style of CSS file, where's that contact section? We gave this a padding left and right of 7%. So I just reduce that padding. So I copy that. I add to my responsive of CSS file. For 1024 pixels screen size, I'll just paste that right here. And the padding top and bottom is still going to remain 80 pixels, but left and right I want to add a padding of 3% instead. I'll save that. Turn back to the web. You're going to that it's going to actually occupy more space when it goes less than 24 pixels, 1024 pixels. When I start to reduce, it's going to grow in width. That padding is going to reduce at the left and the right hand side. Next, I just quickly reduce the font size of this text right here. Now, initially, this text has a font size of 2.5 rem. Okay. So for small laptops, I'll just reduce it to about 3 rem. So go back to my responsive of CSS. So I just paste that right here. I'll give this a font size of 2 rem. I'll save that. And that's going to reduce the font size a bit for small laptops. And you can see when we start to reduce the screen size, the font size is going to drop right there. Okay. Now when we start to reduce further, you're going to notice that it starts to get really, really tight there. Okay. So for 768 pixels, what we want to do, we want to give this container a flex direction of column. Remember initially we give it a display of flex. To arrange this, got an emergency and this the left hand container and the right hand container side by side. So just give it a flex direction of column. So I'll go to that style and look for that class. Where is that class? Yeah, display of flex contact us. So I just go to my responsive CSS file. I just go down here. I'll say dot contact us. I'll give it a flex direction I'll use column. I'll save that. And I return back to the web page. When it goes less than 768 pixels, you're going to get a flex direction of column. But you see, we have a problem. These items right here are not at the end right here. For large laptops and large screen size, we just left it as where it was. We didn't align it to the left hand side. But for mobile device, we want this right hand side container to be at the left hand side. Okay, to be aligned to the left hand side. So to do that, I just give this align items. I use flex stats, and I want it to be at the start of the container. And that's going to align these items at the start right here. So next we have to reduce the font size of this text for mobile. Remember, we reduce the font size for tablet, but for mobile, this is still going to look really large. Let's go to iPhone 12 Pro. When I view this on iPhone 12 Pro, I'm going to notice that the font size is very, very large. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I want to copy that class again. That contractors left. I'll copy this. I'll head down to for mobile phones. I'll paste that. Now we already added a style for font size of 1.3 rem, so I just paste it with this header styles right here. I'll paste that right here. I'll save that. And then return back to the web. You're going to see that the font size is actually smaller, and this actually looks better for small screen devices. So one last thing I'm going to do for these contractor section is to actually reduce the size of this icon container, also the font size of this icon container. Okay, so I'll look for that style. I'll go to my style of CSS file. I have that white here, so I'll just copy this. Now initially this has a width and height of 70 pixels, so I'm just going to reduce the width and height to about 55 pixels for mobile phones. So I'll just paste that right here. I'll give this a width of 55 pixels. I'll give it a height of 55 pixels. Then for the font size of the icon, I'll reduce it to about 1.5 rem. What was the font size initially? Initially, the font size was around 2 rem, so we just reduce it to 1.5 rem. Save that. And now return back to the web page. You're going to notice that this icon is now actually smaller for small screen devices. And with that, we've made this contact section actually responsive. And the website is actually looking really, really good. But this text is so large. Did I know add media queries to this text? Let me check. I don't think I did. I can't see the H2. Because this is where I added styles to the H2 tag for mobile, but I can't see any styles for this one. I didn't add styles. So that one mobile. Let me look for that style. Let's go back to the battles. The service, I meant to say service header. That's the header info right. Yeah, this one. I'll just copy this. I add to my responsive.css file. Now I'm going to actually add similar styles with this one, font size of 1.8 rem. So I'll just paste that right here. So that you're going to share this font size of 1.8 rem style. Go back to the web page, and this actually looks better for mobile devices. I forgot to add media query for this text for the battles, and the website is looking really, really good. So next we're going to start working on this our team section that is going to show the specialized doctors of the hospital. Okay, I'll go back to my index.html file. Just wrap up everything in this contractor section. I'm done here. Then underneath this section, create another section. This section is going to have a class of team section. First of all, we're going to have a header inside this team section. So let me look for that header inside my service section here. This header, I'll just copy that. I don't have to write that code. Paste that right here. Then instead of our services, it's going to be our team. Then this H2 text is going to say our specialized doctors. So I'm going to save that and add some styles to this team section. So I'll just copy this. I'll go to my site of CSS file, scroll the way down. I'll paste that right here. And the team section will have a background color of light blue. You're going to have a padding. Top and bottom of 60 pixels, left and right of 10%. I'll save that. Return back to the web page. You're going to notice that we have that team section right here. So next, we're going to work on the team section container, also the individual cards. Okay. So I'll go back to my index.html file. Underneath this header div, I'll create another div. And this div is going to have a class of team container. And inside this team container, I'm going to have another div that's going to have a class of member. And inside this member div, I'm going to have another div. I'm going to have a class of image. And inside this image container, I'm going to have an image. And this image is going to the images folder. It's going to access team1.jpg. And the alt text is going to be doctor. After this image div, I'm going to have another div. I'm going to have a class of details. It's going to wrap around the details of this particular doctor. The first p tag is going to be Dr. Amina Roberts. And the second p tag is going to be dermatology. Now after this details container, I'll create an anchor tag that's not going to go anywhere, but it's simply going to say book now. Then I'll just copy everything here. I'll drag that down. Again. I'm going to have 3 of these cards. Then for this one, it's going to be team 2. And the name of this second doctor is going to be Dr. Ajon Miera. And this p tag is simply going to say cardiology. I'll scroll down. Then the third image is going to be team 3. Then the name of the doctor is going to be Dr. Clara Mensah. Then the second p tag is going to be pediatrics. I'll save that. Returning back to the web page, you're going to notice that we have those items right here. The items are actually here, but the images are extremely large. Okay, so let's start applying styles to this item. Now I'll say .theme section. I want to target the theme container, so I just go to my index.html, copy that style, copy that class, copy this theme container class. I'll paste that right here. I want to give it one display. I'll give it grid. Grid template columns. I'll give it repeats. Auto fit min max minimum of 300 pixels each of the card, then 1 FR. I'm going to add a gap of 20 pixels between each of the cards. Now I'll quickly style up the image, so I'll just copy this. I'll paste that down here. Target each of the member. Then inside I'm going to have an image container. Then I'll target the image inside this image container. Or first of all, let me target the image container first. I'll give this image container a height of 250 pixels, a width of 100%. And the reason I'm giving it a width of 100% is that I already give this each of the team member, each of the card, a min max of 300 pixels 1 FR. Okay, so I'm just telling it to occupy 100% of it, the width of its parent container. Okay, and I'll copy that, paste that underneath here. I'll target the image inside this image container. Give the image a width of 100%, a height of 100%, and object fits. I'll use cover. I'll save that. Return back to the web page. Again, this image is actually styled and it looks really good. Then I have to actually add more styles to this image, so I'll give the image container a border radius of 10 pixels. Now the image is too close to this text, right? So I'm going to give it a margin bottom. I'll give the image container a margin bottom of 15 pixels. And that's going to add a margin between the image and this text underneath it. You're going to notice that the border radius is not actually being applied. That's because we give the border radius to the image container and the image is actually overflowing the container. So to solve this problem, I'll just give this container overflow of hidden. And that way the overflow of the image is going to be hidden. It's going to have that border radius applied to it. Now what I want to do next is that when someone hover on this image, I want the image to actually zoom out. Okay, so I'm going to apply a transform scale to it. So I'll go to my style CSS, so I'll copy this, copy up to this image right here. I'll paste that underneath here. Then I'm going to say on hover of this image, I'm going to apply a style transform scale. I want it to scale by 1.3. I'll save that. And I return back to the web page. When I hover on this image, you can see that it's going to zoom out. But to actually make the effect look better, I'm going to add a transition to the image. Add a transition for the transform property of 0.5 seconds using out. I'll save that. And when I return back to the web page, when I hover on this, you can see that smooth hover effect on these images. Alright, cool. So I'm just going to style up the item inside the details container. Okay, these two texts right here. Let's do that. I just copy up to this point. I paste that underneath here. I want to target the details container. This details container that wraps around this 2p tag. Okay, So I just copy that, head back to my style of CSS file. I'll paste that right here. I'll give this a padding bottom of 40 pixels, and this is going to add a padding between the info details and this book now button right here, this book now link. Okay, so next I want to apply a padding around this theme container. Okay, because I don't want the images to get to the edge, I don't want the items to get to the edges. Okay, so I'm going to apply a padding around it. So to that, I'm going to target this member container. Just copy this, I'll paste that up here, paste that up here. I give this a padding of 15 pixels. A background color, I give it white. I add a box shadow of 0, 2 pixels, 4 pixels, RGB 0.1. I'll align all the text inside these cards to the center, text and center. I add a border radius of 10 pixels. I'll save that. Now when I return back to the web page, I'm going to know that this card actually looks better this way, and there's like that paddings now around the images. I see that 15 pixels padding and the image, and the text are now aligned center. So next I want to style up this fixed text right here, this Dr. Clara Mensah, the first text in this container. Okay, so I'll go back to my style of CSS file. Now I'm just going to copy this right here. I'll paste that underneath here. Now I want to target the first p tag inside this details container. You see this details container has 2 p tags. I want to target the first child, so I just say p first child. I give this a font size of 1.5 rem and a font weight of 600. I'll save that, and when I return back to the web page, I'm going to notice that this text is completely styled and it looks really good. But I want to actually change the text color, so I just change the text color. I just change it in the details container. So say color, I'll use dark green instead of black. I want dark green. Yeah, this looks way better. So next we are quickly going to style up this book now link right here, and you're going to notice that the book now link is going to be positioned at the bottom of this card right here. That's what we are going to do. It's going to be positioned just at the bottom of this card. So let's do that. I'll go back to my style of CSS file. I'll just copy from this point. Now target the anchor tag in there. First of all, I want the padding top and bottom of 10 pixels, left and right of 15 pixels to this anchor tag. I add a border of 1 pixels, solid blue. I also add a background color of blue. Then I want the text color, the color of the text to be white. I'll save that, and now return back to the web page. You can notice that button right here, but I don't want this button to be at this position right here. I want it to be positioned right here at the edges of these cards. Okay, so we have to give it a position of absolute. I'll give this a position of absolute. Bottom of negative 20 pixels, left of 50%. Then I'll give it a transform, translate x of negative 50%. I'll save that. And now I return back to the web page. I'm going to use that this button, we can't actually find this button. That's because we can't find the button because the button is actually positioned absolute, but the button is positioned right now absolute to the entire web page. That's the viewport of the device. Remember that in CSS, you cannot position an element absolute to a static element. Right now, this container right now has a position of static, so we cannot position an element absolute to it. So to actually ensure we can position that button absolute to this member container, we have to give it a position of relative or a position outside of static. Okay, so I'm just going to give this member container a position. Sorry, position. I'll use relative. When I save that and return back to the web, you're going to see that button is going to be positioned absolute to this member cards right here. Cool. So next I'm going to apply more styles to this button right here. So I'll go back to my style of CSS file. Down here, I'll just add a border radius of 8 pixels. Then when someone hovers on this button, I want to add a hover property to it. I'll paste that right here on hover of this link. I want to add a background color of white, and then I want the text color to be dark gray. I'll save that. Returning back to the web page, when I hover on this, you can see that little hover effect right there. So I just add a transition to make it look smoother. I add a transition 0.5 seconds is in, out. I'll save that. Turn back to the web page. When I hover on this, you can see that smooth transition on these links right here. So I have to check if this is responsive. So I'll go to my developer tools, scroll down. For small screen device, I'll just reduce the padding at the left and the right hand side. So I just look for that style. I'll go up. I will give it a padding 60 pixels top and bottom, 10 pixels left and right. So I just reduce the padding at the left and the right. I'll head to my format. I'll just apply this for tablets. I'll paste that right here. Then I'm going to add the padding to it. Now top and bottom, the padding is going to be my 60 pixels. Left and right is going to be 5%. I'll save that. And it actually looks better for mobile devices. Let's check this out on iPad. Use iPad mini. Yeah, it looks really, really good. And with that, I'm basically done with the theme section. I can start working on the testimonial section. So I head back to my index.html file. I just wrap up this theme section. I'm basically done here. Then on this section, create another section. This section is going to have a class of testimonial section. I'll just copy that header from this theme section. I'll just copy this, close this back up, and I'll paste that right here. This first p tag is simply going to say testimonials, while this h2 tag is simply going to say what our patients say about us. I'll save that, head back to the web page, I'll scroll down. You can see those items I just added right here. So next I'm going to apply styles to this section. So I'll just copy this class name, copy this testimonial section class name. I'll go to my style of CSS file, scroll all the way down. I'll paste that right here. I'll simply just add a padding to this, top and bottom of 60 pixels, left and right of 0. I'll save that. And that's going to add a padding around this testimonial section container right here. So head back to my index.html file. Now underneath this div header, I'll create another div. This div is going to have a class of testimonials. And inside this, I'm going to have another div that is going to have a class of testimonial. That's for each of the testimonial. Now each of these testimonials is going to have an image that's going to represent the image of the person that's actually leaving the testimonial. So I'm going to the images folder. I will look for the image. It's going to be person1.jpg. Then I just simply put person for the test. After this image tag, I'm going to have two p tags. The first p tag is simply going to say Aisha Khan. Then I'm going to have another p tag. This one is going to say Lao, Pakistan. Now after that, I'm going to have a div. And this is the div that's going to wrap around all the stars, all the rating stars. So I'll give this a class of stars. And for each of these stars, I'm going to use a font awesome icon. I'll paste that right here. The font awesome icon is going to be of class faz far star. Then drag that down multiple times. 1, 2, 3. Then this last one is going to be faz far half out. This is going to represent half star. Correct? And this one is going to be 1 star, 1 star, 1 star, which is 4 star and half. That's 4.5 star rating. Then after this star container, we're going to have a p tag. And this p tag is actually going to contain the words of the person that left the testimonial. It's going to be staff were kind and professional. My recovery was smooth and well managed. I'll save that. I'm going to head back to the web page. Obviously, we're going to have this very, very large image. Okay. So let's apply some styles to this. And you can see those stars right here. Full star, full star, full star, full star. And this one is going to be half star. So let's apply styles to this. So I'll go to my style of CSS file. First of all, I'll just copy these testimonials right here. I head to my style of CSS file. Down here, I'm going to say .testimonial section. Then I'll paste that testimonials right here. Or I should just give this testimonials container. That's going to be a better name. I'll say testimonials container. I'll just copy this. Instead of testimonials, I'm going to just use testimonials container. Paste that right here. And this testimonials content is going to have a max width of 450 pixels. Now this max will just simply represent the maximum width is going to occupy for last screen device. Say you are viewing this testimonial content on a last screen device, this is the maximum width it's going to actually have. Now when the screen size you're actually viewing this testimonial container is less than 450 pixels, I want it to have a width of 90%. That's when you're on something like tablets and mobile phones, I want it to have a width of 90%. I give it a margin of auto to ensure it's always at the center. Alright, cool. So next I want to style the image inside the testimonial container. Okay, so I just copy this. I'll paste that right here. Now just get that testimonial class name, which is this class name right here. I'll copy this. I'll paste that right here. Then I'll target the image in there. Give the image a width of 90 pixels, a height of 90 pixels, border radius of 50% to ensure the image is actually circular. I'll save that. And when I return back to the web page, I'm going to see that this image is actually styled. So I just quickly give it object fit of cover. I'll give it object fit. I'll use cover. Next, I want to style each of the testimonial. Okay, so to do that, I'll just copy this. I'll paste that up here. First of all, I want to give this a background color of light blue. I add a padding of 20 pixels, a border radius of 10 pixels. I'll give it a text align of center to ensure that the text are actually at the center. Text align of center. Then lastly, a box shadow of 0 pixels, 2 pixels, 4 pixels, RGBA 0, 0, 0. I'll paste it to 0.1. I'll save that. When I return back to the web page, you notice that this box is completely styled and it looks really, really good. Next, I want to add more styles to the image and also add styles to these other items inside the testimonial card. So I head back. I'll give this image a border of 5 pixels, solid white. Now simply just give it a margin bottom of 5 pixels. I'll save that. And that's going to ensure that there's a margin between this image and this item underneath it. And you can see that white border around the image. So next I want to style these other items inside this testimonial card. So I'll go back to my style of CSS file. Copy from this point. Copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. Now I want to target the p tag in there. I'll give this p tag a color of dark gray and a font size of 0.9 rem. I'll save that. And I will return back to the web page. You're going to see that these p tags actually look good, okay? But I want to actually give this p tag that actually represent the name its own unique style. So I'm going to target it. Now, since the p tag is not the first child of that container, I'm going to make use of the first of type. I'll paste that right here. I'm going to say first of type as the first p tag. I'll give this a font size of 1.3 rem. Font weight, I'll use 500. And the color of this one is going to be dark blue. I'll save that. When I return back to the web, you're going to see that this actually has a unique style from the rest. I'll just increase the font size to 600 instead of 500. I'll just make use of 600. Yeah, this is way better. So next I want to style these stars right here. So I'll just target the container. I'll paste that right here. Then I'll target the stars container inside the testimonial. Stars. That's this stars container. This stars container that wraps around these icons, these stars icons. Okay. I'll give this a margin. Top and bottom 15 pixels, left and right of 0. And that's going to add a margin at the top and at the bottom of these stars right here. I'll give them a font size of 1.1 rem. And the color of this hair color right here. Save that, go back to the web page and you can see those stars right here completely styled. Now we have successfully designed this testimonial card. So next we have to actually add swiper to this, okay? Because if you look at the final project, you're going to notice that we have testimonials that we can actually navigate through, and you know that there's actually an auto slide on it. It's going to actually slide by itself every 3 to 5 seconds, okay? So let's actually implement that with SwiperJS. I'll go to my index.html file. Down here, I'll create another swiper. I'm saying const swiper. I'll call this testimonial swiper instead. Testimonial swiper is equals to new swiper. For the class name is going to be testimonial swiper. First of all, this swiper is going to have the loop set to true. The space between them is going to be 30. The slides per view is going to be 1. I only want to show one item. I only want to show one item to the user, even on last screen device. I just want to show only one item. So slide per view is going to be 1. Then this one is not going to have a navigation like this one did, the next and the previous button. Instead, this one is going to have a pagination. I'm going to call the class swiper pagination. Then clickable, I'll set this to true. I want the user to be able to click on the pagination, okay? And that's all. So I just head to my testimonial section. For this one, this class I created, I'm going to wrap around it. I just copy this class. I head back up. Now this is the container. So just put it in the container that wraps around everything. It's going to be the testimonial swiper. Then I'll cut this. I'll wrap this inside a swiper wrapper, div.swiper wrapper. Paste that in here. Then each of these testimonials is going to have a class of swiper slide. Then I need this swiper wrapper div. I'm going to add the pagination. I'll create a div. I'm going to have a class name of this pagination class we created down here, this swiper pagination class. I'll paste that in this div right here. And mind you, when we return back to the web page, we are not going to see that pagination button because it has a position of, I think, absolute. Okay, so we have to first of all give it a position of static. So I head to my style of CSS file. Down here, I'm going to say .testimonial section .testimonial container, testimonials container. I'll target that class. Then I'll give it a position of static. I'll save that and head back to the web page. You're going to notice that we cannot see those paginations right here. That's because we only have one card, one testimonial card. So let's add more. So I'll just go to my index.html file. Add more slides to this. I'll drag this down. 1, 2, 3. Now I have 4. When I return back to the web page, I'm going to notice that we now have 4 items right here. I can actually navigate using the pagination. Okay, but we don't want to see all these other items right here. So we're going to give this testimonial container overflow of hidden. So I'll just go to my style of CSS. I'll scroll up. There's that testimonial container. I'll give this overflow. I'll use hidden. That way, any of the cards that overflows are going to be hidden from the viewport. And we can navigate using this pagination right here. I'll just add margin between this pagination and these cards right here. So I'll scroll down. I'll give this a margin 15 pixels top and bottom, left and right 0. That's going to add a margin between the pagination buttons and these cards right here. So next, we're going to actually integrate auto slides to it so that it can actually slide on its own after every 3 and 5 seconds. So I'll go back to my index.html file. I'll scroll all the way down. After this pagination, I'm going to say auto play. The delay is going to be 3000 milliseconds, which is basically 3 seconds. It's going to actually slide every 3 seconds. Then I'll add this property right here to ensure that when the user interacts with the slide, it's not going to stop auto sliding. It's still going to slide automatically even when the user interacts with the slide. I'll save that. And when I return back to the web page, I'm going to notice that every 3 seconds, this is going to actually slide on its own every 3 seconds. So next, let's update the details of the testimonial, the image, the text, and the actual testimony. Let's actually do that. So I'll scroll up. The first one is okay the way it is. So we have to start updating from the second card. For the second one, the image is going to be person2.jpg. The name is going to be Fatima Ahmed. Then the location is going to be Abu Dhabi UAE. Then this one is just going to be full star. See fast star. Full star, that's 5 star. Then the testimony is going to be this right here. Very clean hospital with attentive doctors. I felt safe the entire time. The next one, the image is going to be person 3. The name of this person is going to be Emily Clark. The location is going to be London, UK. I'll scroll down. And for the testimony, it's going to be this text right here. The next person is going to be person 4. The name is going to be Marcus Reed. And this person is from Atlanta, USA. And for the testimony, it's going to be this testimony right here. Alright, cool. I'll save that. Oh, this one, let me just get rid of this. Let me check if it's on the other ones. Yeah, everything looks okay. I'll save that. Head back to the web page and navigate. Looks okay. Yeah. So next, I want to actually ensure that the active bullet point here has the same color as the blue we are using in our website. So I just target that. So I head back to my style.css file. I just copy this. I'll paste that right here. I'll target the testimonial container. Testimonials container. Now I'll target this swiper pagination. So I'll just copy this swiper pagination. I'll paste that right here. Now to target the active pagination button, I'm going to make use of bullets active. I'll give this a background color of red so you can actually see the difference. When I go back to the web page, I'm going to notice that this actually has a background color of red, but we don't want it to have a background color of red. We want it to have this color right here, this blue we are using for our website. So I just give this a color, background color of blue. That looks way better. Now I'm basically done with the testimonial section. All that is left to do is actually ensure that it's responsive. So I just go to my developer tools. It looks good for tablets. It looks good for, let me use Nest Hub Max. It's a large tablet. It looks good here too. I'll use iPhone 12. It actually looks good on iPhone 12 too, because we give it max width of 450 pixels and a width for, if the screen size goes less than 450 pixels, it's going to have a width of 90%. So it looks good on mobile phones too. So with that, I'm basically done with the testimonial section. So next, we're going to start working on this subscribe box right here. So I'll just head back to my index.html file. Just wrap up this div right here, this div container. Wrap up this testimonials container because I want to create this box inside the testimonial section. So after this div, I'll create another div. I'll give this div a class of subscribe box. And inside this div, I'm going to have h2 tag. There's going to have this text in there, subscribe for new updates from Medicare. And after that, I'm going to have a div here. And this div is going to have a class of inputs container. And inside this input container div, I'm going to have an input. It's going to be of type text. I'm going to have a placeholder of example at gmail.com. After this input, I'm going to have a button that is simply going to say subscribe. Save that. Right back to the web page. You can see those items just added right here. Subscribe for new updates from Medicare. So let's start applying styles to it with CSS. So I'm going to head back to my style of CSS file. First of all, I'll copy this subscribe box. I'll copy this. I'll head to my style of CSS file. Paste that class right here. First of all, I'm going to give this a background color of dark blue. I'll give it a padding. Top and bottom, I want a padding of 40 pixels. Left and 10%. I want to have a maximum width of 1000 pixels. Now for very large screen, for screen size that the width of the screens above 1000 pixels, it's going to have a width of 1000 pixels. But when the screen reduces less than 1000 pixels, I want it to have a width of 90%. That's for mobile phone and tablets. Give you the item a display of flex, a justify content of center, and I want the container to have a border radius of 10 pixels. I'll save that. Return back to the web page, and you can see that box right here, but the box is not at the center, so we have to give it a margin of auto to ensure it's actually at the center. Give it a margin left and right of auto. So I'll give it a margin top and bottom. I want to have a margin of 20 pixels left and right auto. I'll save that. Go back to the web page. It's going to have a margin at the top of 20 pixels, and left and right the margin is going to be auto. Now we'll give this item a flex so that we can actually be able to position it at the center, but we don't want them to be arranged horizontally. We want them to be arranged vertically. So I'll give this a flex direction. I'll use column, and that's going to ensure that the items are going to be flex, yes, but they're going to arrange vertically. So next I'll style this h2 tag in there. So I'll just copy this subscribe box style, paste that right here. I'll target the h2 tag in there. I'll give it a color of white, a font size, I use 2.2 rem, then a text align of center. I'll save that. Return back to the web page. You're going to notice that this text actually looks better this way. So next I want to style this input container and the items inside this input container div. So down here I'm going to say dot subscribe box dot, I'll copy that input container class we created. I'll just copy this. I'll head back to my style of CSS, so I'll paste that right here. I want the input container to have a width of 70%, margin top and bottom 10 pixels, left and right of 0. I'll give it a background color of white, a height of 45 pixels. I'll give it a display of flex. Then I'll align the items inside the flex container at the center. I'll save that. Return back to the web page. You can see this container right here, and it looks really good. And this input container is not at the center, so ensure it's at the center. So I just give it a margin property. I give it a margin top and bottom. I want to have a margin of 10 pixels left and right. I want to have a margin of auto. Save that. That margin of auto left and right is going to ensure it's actually at the center of its container. Alright, cool. Yes, I'm going to add a border radius to it. I also add a gap between the items inside this flex container. So add a border radius to this. I'll give you the border radius of 5 pixels, a padding top and bottom of 0, left and right 5 pixels, and last I'm going to add a gap between the items inside this flex container, a gap of 15 pixels. I'll save that. Return back to the web page. You're going to see that there's now a gap between this input and this button. So now you can actually start styling this input inside this input container. So I just copy this, I'll paste that down here, I'll target the input in there. And since we already gave the input container a width of 70%, we'll just simply tell the input to occupy a width of 100%. And we gave it a height of 45 pixels, so just tell the input to have a height of 45 pixels. I'll also get rid of the outline. I'll give it none. I'll get rid of the border. I'll give it none. None. I'll give the input a padding top and bottom of 0, left and right of 5 pixels, and lastly I want the text inside the input to be dark gray. Save that. Go back to the web page. You're going to see that this input is completely styled. And when I type on this, you're going to see that the text inside this input are dark gray. Next I'm going to style up this subscribe button right here. So I'll copy this right here, I'll paste that underneath here. Now just target the button inside this input container. First of all, I want to give this button a flex shrink of 0. That way the input can never have, that way no matter how large the input grows, it's never going to compress the button. Now I'll give it a padding top and bottom of 8 pixels, left and right 15 pixels. I don't want any border on this button, so I'll give it a border none. And lastly, I'll give it a background color of blue. I'll save that. Go back to the web page. You can see this button is completely styled. I'm going to actually apply more styles to it. Okay, so first of all, give it a color of white to ensure the text inside the button is white. Give it a border radius of 5 pixels, and lastly cursor of pointer. Save that. Go back to the web page. You're going to see that this button is completely styled. And when someone hovers on this button, you want to apply a hover property to it. So I'll copy up to this point, copy this, I'll paste that underneath here. Now I want to add a hover property, so I'm going to say on hover, hover. I want this to have a background color of dark blue. I'll save that. When I return back to the web, when I hover on this button, you can see that dark blue right there. Alright, cool. Now you have to check if this is responsive, and it has to be responsive because give it a width of 90% for small screen devices, and it's actually responsive. But we still have to do more. The H2 text looks extremely large for mobile devices, and the input is looking very compressed. So we still have to add more styles to it to make it look good on mobile devices. First of all, trace where it starts to get unresponsive. Just trace these breakpoints, go down. I think the major styles we are going to apply is going to be for mobile because it looks good on tablet. It's going to be from maybe 768. We just reduce the font size a bit for mobile devices of this H2 text. So let's do that. I just go up and copy the styles for this H2 text, the name I give to it. So I'll go to my responsive of CSS. Now those styles are added for the H2 breakpoints. Yeah, when I give it a font size of 1.8 frame, I'll just add that right here. That way, it's also going to have a font size of 1.8 frame for mobile devices. And when I reduce, we're going to notice that breakpoint right there. Alright, cool. And I also have to increase the margin between the H2 text and this input. So I'll do that with my style of CSS where they are too close to each other. I'll just give this a margin bottom. I'll give it 5 pixels, a little bit of margin at the bottom. Yeah, that's way better. Let me check this on iPhone 12 Pro. Okay, it still looks okay. And I also just reduce the padding we give to this box. Okay, so I'll go to my style of CSS file, look for that box. Remember, I'll give it a padding left and right of 10%. So I'll just reduce that. I'll copy this. Go to my responsive of CSS for mobile phones. I'll paste that right here. I want this to have a padding top and bottom. It's still going to have a padding of 40 pixels. Left and right, I'll reduce it to 3%. That looks better, but the input is still too small for mobile device. So I'll just increase the width of the input container. So I'll just go to my style of CSS file. Where's the style of the input container? Maybe I'll give it a width of 70%. I'll just increase the width. I'll head to my responsive of CSS, go all the way down, paste that right here. I'll give this a width of 90%. I'll save that. Yeah, this looks way better. And with that, we are done with this subscribe box. So let's start working on the footer. So head back to my index.html file. Go back to my index.html file. Just wrap up this section. I'm done in this section. I'll create a footer tag. So inside this footer, I'm going to have a div. I'm going to have a class of footer container. And this footer container is always going to wrap around everything in the footer. Okay, it's always going to wrap around this div, and this div right here. Okay, so let's first of all add this div that's going to wrap around these items inside this container. So I'll go back to my index.html file. First of all, I'm going to create another div for the first item. And this is going to have a class of footer about, and inside this div I'm going to have a p tag. I'm going to have a text in there, med care. Okay, and this is going to be similar with the logo we added for our navbar. So I just put this inside a span. I'll paste the med in there. I just give it a class of logo. So CSS know to style this paragraph tag as our logo. Save that. So go back to the web page, and you can see that medcare logo right here in the footer. Okay, so go back to my index.html file. After that, I'm going to add a p tag. I'm going to have this paragraph in it. And after that, I'll create another div. And this div is going to have a class or social icons. Inside this div, I'm going to have an anchor tag that's not going to go anywhere. And inside this anchor tag, I'm going to have an icon. It's going to have a class of faz, fab, fa, Facebook, F. I'll drag that down. 1, 2, 3. The next one is going to be fast far, X, Twitter. The next one is going to be fab far, Instagram. And the last one is going to be fab far, LinkedIn. I'll save that. Go back to the web page. You can see those items we just added and the icons we just added. Okay, so I'm going to add the other items of the footer. So after this footer about, I'll create another div. This div is going to have a class of quick links. In there, I'll create a h3 tag that's going to say quick links. After this h3 tag, I'm going to create another list. Create an li tag in there. Now each of these li tags have an anchor tag that's not going to go anywhere. First one is going to be home. Drag that down multiple times. 1, 2, 3, 4. The second one, about. The third one is going to be services. Fourth one is going to be medical team. And the last link is going to be testimonials. Now to create a similar container, so I just copy this, I drag this down. Then this one is not going to be quick link, this one is going to be external links. For the external links, the links are actually much. So I just take all these header tag and I'll paste them right here. Okay, inside this URL tag, you can see all of them right here. Now after this external links container, I'll create another div down here. This div is going to have a class of appointment. Inside this div, I'm going to have a h3 tag that's going to say book appointment. After that, I'm going to have a p tag that's going to have this text in it. And after that, I'm going to have an anchor tag that's going to have this text called this number. And when you click on this link, I want you to call this number right here. Okay. Now with this, what this tail is going to do is that when someone clicks on this anchor tag, it's going to actually dial this number automatically on your phone or your whatever device you're actually viewing this website on. And after this footer container, I'm going to create a div here. I'm going to have a class of footer bottom. And this is going to have a p tag in there. That's simply going to say copyright 2025 Igbon Tech YouTube channel. I'll save that. I'll head back to the web page. I'm going to notice all those items we just added right here. So let's start applying styles to them. So I'll just copy this footer container class. Copy this class name. I'll head to my style.css file. Scroll down. First of all, I'm going to add styles to the footer itself. I'll give you a background color of light blue. A padding top of 80 pixels, left and right of 0, then bottom of 50 pixels. Then now I'll target the footer container. Paste that class right here. I want to give the footer container a width of 80%, a margin of auto to ensure it's actually at the center. So I'll give it a margin of auto. I'll give it a display. I'll give it grid. Then the grid template columns. Repeat. Auto fits. Min max 230 pixels 1 fr. I'm going to add a gap between the items. I'll give them a gap of 20 pixels. Add a padding bottom of 30 pixels, a margin bottom of 20 pixels. Add a border at the bottom to a border bottom of 2 pixels, solid light gray. Then lastly, I want all the text inside this footer container to have a color of dark gray. I'll save that. I'll go back to the web page. I'm going to notice that the items of this footer container are now arranged in a grid display. They are looking better this way. So next, I'm going to start styling the individual items in this footer container. I'll start with these items at the left hand side. Okay. I'll go back to my style.css file. Down here, I'm going to say footer container. I want to target the p tag inside this footer container. I want to go back to the web page. You're going to notice that we actually have 2 p tags. This Medcare logo is a p tag. This is a p tag. So I want to target the last p tag. Okay. So if I target the last child, it's going to target this icon container. So I'm going to use the p last of type. So I want to target I'll just copy that class name. The item, the footer about. I'll just copy this. I'll paste that right here. I'm going to say p last of type as the last p tag in this footer about container. I want to give it a font size of 0.9 rem. Add the margin. Top and bottom is going to have a margin of 30 pixels, left and right 0. I'll save that. Go back to the web. You're going to notice that this actually looks better this way. But I want to actually add a line height to this text so that the space between each of the line are going to increase. So I just give this a line height. I'll give it 30 pixels. Save that. Go back to the web, you're going to see that there's now space between each of the p tag line of text. Okay, so next we're going to style this social icons. Let's do that. So I'll go back to my style.css file. I'll copy from this point here. I stay inside the footer about container. I'll paste that right here. Now I want to target the social icons container, so I just go to my index.html file. I'll copy this class name. I'll go to my style.css file. I'll paste that right here. I'll simply just give this a display of flex, and I'm going to add a gap between each of the icon, a gap of 30 pixels. I'll save that. You're going to notice that they are now in the flex display and there's a gap between each of the icon. So next I want to style each of the anchor tags. So I just copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. I'll just target the anchor tag in there. I'll give this a font size of 1.4 rem and a color of blue. I'll save that. Head back to the web. You're going to notice these items are now styled. I want to hover on this. I want to actually change the color of these icons. So I just go back to my style set. I paste that right here. Target the anchor tag. Now on hover of this anchor tag, I want to give it a color of dark gray. I'll save that. Now when you hover on this icon, you're going to notice that they are going to actually change. The color is going to change. Next, let's style this quick list container. So I go back to my style set. I copy from this footer container. I'll paste that underneath here. I want to target the quick list container, so I'll just copy the class name. I head back to my style.css, so I'm going to paste that right here. Now, first of all, target the h3 tag in there. I'll simply just give this h3 tag a margin bottom of 15 pixels. Save that. Go back to the web. You're going to notice that there's now a margin between this h3 tag and these items right here, this list right here. And the font size of the h3 tag looks okay. There's really no need to adjust the font size. It looks okay. So I'll just style this on that list. So I'll go back to my style.css. So I'm going to copy this. I'll paste that right here. I'll just target the another list. I'll give this a list style of none. And that's going to get rid of the bullet points in this list right here. Okay. Next, I'll target the a line there. So I'll copy this. I'll paste that right here. I'll target each of the list items. I'll give them a margin bottom of 12 pixels. I'll save that. Go back to the web. You're going to see that there's not a margin at the bottom of each of these links, and they look better this way. Next, I want to style each of the anchor tags. So I just go back to my style.css. So I'll copy this. I'll paste that underneath here, and I'll just target the anchor tag in there. I'll give this a color of dark gray. Then the font size, I'll use 0.9 rem. I'll save that. That actually looks better, way better. So lastly, you have to actually style this other side. Okay, this appointment container. So let's do that. So I'll copy this, paste that underneath here. I'll just copy that appointment class from this place. Copy this class name right here. I'll head to my style.css file. I'll paste that right here. Now I want to target the p tag. Now you're going to notice that this p tag and this p tag, we want to apply similar styles to them. So what I'm going to do, I'll just cut this from this place. I'll cut this off, and I'm going to add it to that other one we styled up, this last of step. I'll add a comma and I'll paste that right. That way they are going to share these styles together. I'll save that. Head back to the web. You're going to see that those styles have been applied to this other paragraph tag. So next, I'll just style this anchor tag here. Scroll all the way down. I'll paste that right here. Now I don't want to target the p tag. I want to target the anchor tag. First of all, I'll give this a border of 3 pixels solid blue. I give it a padding, top and bottom 15 pixels, left and right 20 pixels, a border radius of 8 pixels, and a color of dark gray. Save that. Head back to the web page. You're going to see that this other link is actually styled. Now when I click on this, it's actually going to make a phone call. You can see it right here. I cancel that. So next on the bucket list, we have to style this footer bottom. So let's do that. So down here, I'm going to say footer. Now I'll target the footer bottom container dot footer bottom. Sorry, spell that bottom correctly. I'll simply give this a text align of center, a color of dark gray, and a font size. I use 0.9 rem. And that looks really good. So we are basically done with the footer, but we have to ensure it's actually responsive. So I just go to my developer tools, inspect, head to my developer tools, scroll all the way down. It actually looks good on mobile devices. Remember, we gave this a display of grid, so it's going to be responsive for small devices. All you just have to do for mobile is just increase the width. Okay, let me go to my style of CSS and see the width I used for this footer. I gave the footer container a width of 80%, so I just increase that width. I just copy this. It's my responsive of CSS. I just paste that. Let me just give it a width of 90%. So I'll paste the class right here. So this subscribe box input container and this footer container is going to share this width of 90% style. Save that. Head back. Yeah, the width actually increases to 90%, and this looks very, very good for mobile device. So I'll just quickly add a border radius to the edges of this footer. I'll just go back. I want to add a border radius at the edges right here. So I'll go to my footer container. Where's that footer? I'll go to my style of CSS file. Add a border here. Border top left radius. I'll give it 30 pixels. I'll drag that down. Now this one is going to be border right radius. I'll save that. Now you're going to notice that the edges of this footer right here are actually curved. Yeah, I think we're actually done with the footer. So we are basically done with the website. So next we just have to go through everything in the website and see if everything is actually working fine. For desktop, everything looks really, really good. You can navigate through the testimonials. Looks good. You can type here. And the footer is looking okay. Let me check on mobile. Yeah, now this is iPhone 12. And there's no margin between the items of this theme container. You can notice that this bookmark button is too close to the next item. They are too close to each other for small screen devices. I just simply increase the margin between them or the gap between them. Just look for that size. Scroll the way up to our theme section. Theme section. Remember, I gave it a gap of 20 pixels in the grid display. So I just increase that gap to 40 pixels. I'll save that. Yeah, the gap is actually better now. I'll still check. Now I just also increase the gap between these colors container and these emails container. So I'll look for that style. It's going to be on my contact section. I think this is it right here. I'll just give it a gap of 20 pixels instead. Yeah, the gap, and let me just think this is actually okay. This actually looks okay. Scroll through the website. This is working. Everything is working fine. Everything looks okay. So the very last thing we're going to do in this project, we're going to add navigation. Okay. Now remember, we have this navigation right here. When I click on home or about or services, it doesn't really do anything. Okay, so we're going to fix that. So first of all, you have to add ID property to each of the section. Okay, so I just grab publish footer right here. I'm going to give this hero an ID. I'll give it home. I'll give this about an ID. I'll give it about. Then I'll give this service an ID. I'll give it service. Then also I'll give this team an ID. I'll give it team. And lastly, I'll give this testimonial section an ID of testimonials. Now I have to actually add this to my navigation. So I'll just open up this and look at my navigation, my nav. Inside my nav, first of all, I'm going to say this is going to be hash home. This one is going to be hash about. This one is going to be hash service. This one is going to be hash team. And the last one is going to be hash testimonials. Okay, I'll save that. Now we are basically telling these links that when we click on these links, just basically take us to the testimonial section or the service section. Okay, now when I go back to the web page, when I click on service, it's going to bring me to the service section. When I click on testimonials, it's going to bring me to the testimonial sections. But you're going to notice that the scrolling is not actually smooth. Immediately we click on it, it's just going to scroll down so fast. So I want to actually make it smooth. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to give the HTML a smooth scroll behavior. So I'll go to my style of CSS file. I'll just scroll all the way up. Up here, I'm going to create a HTML style. Say HTML. I want the scroll behavior to be smooth. I'll save that. Now when I go back to the web page, when I click on testimonial, you're going to see that smooth. It's going to transition down. When I click on services, it's going to transition down, and that's actually way better. And we also have to add navigation to the footer. When we go down here, when we click on this, they are not actually working. They're just going to scroll you to the top because we added hash to them. Okay, so we actually have to work on those navigations. So I'll just go back to my index.html file. I'll just copy everything here. I'll close up this section right here. Go to my footer section, put that up. I'll head to my quick links. I'll just take this off. And I'll just paste that right here. I'll save that. When I head back to the web page, when I click on this service, it's going to take me to the services section. When I click on home, it's going to bring me back to the home section. And that's it for this project. Now, if you enjoyed this project, smash on the like button and leave a comment below. It's going to help the YouTube algorithm to push this content to more people just like you who are going to find it valuable. And basically, you're considered as a little way of you supporting the channel. And lastly, if you've not subscribed, ensure you do that and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out on the next project we're going to build together in this channel. I'll see you in the next video.